This is the city of Deinze now, some 10 miles away from Ghent, which used to be the home of Ghent Wevelgem. Now for the second year it is here. Now the classic race which bridges the gap between the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, you never quite know who's going to go for the victory and who is actually here for training. It's a distance of 208 kilometers, which is 130 miles. And riders like George Hincapie, are they here to win or are they here to just prepare for a big day out in France on Sunday? The event run over a traditional course, even though we do start here in Deinze, it still goes down into the Flanders hills. It goes twice over the Kemmelberg. And the weather here, well, the rain is passing through, and when it does hit them, it's going to be very, very cold. The Belgians are saying Tom Bonen is the favourite, but you know, the Belgians might know the answer too, because they've had the most winners in this event. Some 38 times they've won in the 70-year history of this event. Italy a distant second with only 6. Let's see who might be up for the day as we now join Paul Sherwin.
Looking up there at Magnus Backstedt, he's quite amazing really. He's a Danish rider. I'm going to talk to him in English, and he's on the podium just at the moment speaking in Flemish. No mean achievement for probably the biggest man in the bike race. 1.93 meters and weighing in at 90 kilos. That's almost 200 pounds. Wow. It's good to see you. Last year we followed you through the Giro d'Italia where you were absolutely superb, and it seems as if you've had a renaissance over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm starting to come back again. I've had a couple of years without injuries, without, you know, I've been sick too much, and I felt like last year was all coming together for me. And like I've had a bit of bad luck this year. I was sick for about 2.5 weeks just before Tirreno Adriatico. So I've been playing catch up the whole time through the classics here. So I'm just starting to feel like I'm getting on top of things now, and I just hope I can do something for in Roubaix.
You're a big strong boy, but 90 kilos is a lot to drag over something like the Kemmelberg.
Kemmelberg's not too bad though, because it's relatively short, and I can do that sort of thing. It's more like a power sprint over the climb. So Kemmel I can get over without any major trouble. It's worse when you come down to the Alps and the Pyrenees and that sort of thing. Then I can definitely feel that 90 kilos is a bit heavy.
It's going to be a nasty weather today. Do you think you can win this one?
Race is probably pretty good for me. Like, it's all flat, a lot of wind, and only 2 times over the Kemmel. So if my legs are good, then I can definitely win it. But you need to have a bit of luck on the day as well, you know.
Good luck.
Thanks.
George, a little bit cold today. Maybe you're thinking forward to Paris-Roubaix, a back seat?
Yeah, definitely. Don't want to kill myself here today and spend too much energy. If the situation happens where I'm up there in the front, then I'll definitely try something, but try not to be too stressed about today and thinking more about Sunday.
It's going to be very difficult once the race gets up to the coast, because with this wind battering in off the North Sea, I can see the race splitting up quite early.
Yeah, it's going to be a typical Ghent Wevelgem, and there'll be a big battle right before the feed zone and right after the feed zone. So I'd look for a small group before the Kemmelberg.
Any reflections after the Tour of Flanders? Because it was, everyone agrees, rather a strange race.
It was definitely a strange race. It was a bad situation to have 40 guys away, and we had some guys up there, and a lot of the favorites had guys up there, but it wasn't good for anybody. Given that, I do feel like the strongest guy did win the race, but possibly some of us could have done better without that big breakaway away.
What about Team US Postal today? Thinking maybe about Max van Heeswijk?
Yeah, this is a great race for Max. We have a good team, and so we'll try to get the guys up there.
And your tactic will be, well, if the chance presents itself, you'll go for it.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I'm still tired from Sunday, but hopefully maybe my body will wake up midway through the race. Thanks, Paul.
It's been a long, hard ride back, hasn't it, for you, after some pretty dramatic and nasty crashes?
Oh, I mean, and this is only my 5th race in 10 months because, I mean, obviously breaking the neck and the ankle. I mean, I only started walking properly pretty much in January, so, I mean, we're in April and the form's not what it was last year, but every day it's getting better and I feel stronger, but
Henk, you know, people said that you would never ride a bike again, let alone walk, and here you are at the start of one of the biggest bike races in the world.
Yeah, well, the doctors told me that maybe, you know, like they may have to take the foot off if it wasn't going to heal. So, I mean, it's there now, and I've had some great help with a lot of people. I've managed to come back, and just to even start on the grid's great now. But, you know, being an athlete, that's just not enough for me. So, I am coming up every day, and I mean, it's a miracle that I'm here, and you know, hopefully I can make it every race better.
Good luck for today.
Thanks, mate.
Jürgen, the form is coming rather well. In fact, you had your best ever classic last weekend.
Yeah, it was awesome to ride in the front with all these people on the road with the passion in their eyes for cycling was awesome. First, I did not have those legs, and you know, the group went smaller and smaller, and you got more motivation. And for me, it was a bit sad that the race was 22 kilometers longer than I thought, but I did a good race, so perhaps I will continue.
A performance like that must give you ambitions for the future. Races like Ghent-Wevelgem today, and of course Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah, for sure. Today I'm still tired from last Sunday. That's for sure. And yeah, I will keep my fingers crossed that we won't have rain, because I'm not that good in the rain. So hopefully the weather will be good today. And yeah, we will see. It's a lot of wind, and this race, but in particular, is always done before the Camelback. It's so much wind on the road, and when I see my legs not recovered that good from last Sunday, I will prepare for next Sunday.
Okay, we'll follow you closely.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Oscar, can I ask you a quick question in English? We saw in Tour of Flanders you had a very big problem with the nose.
Yes, I had a crash there, and then after the crash, all race is very bad because I cannot wheels, and the final, when the riders attacks, I cannot stay there.
But you still got 3 points to keep the lead in the World Cup.
Yeah, it's not too much, because the next week, this week is Paris-Roubaix. Maybe Wevelgem pass me.
And did you learn your English in South Africa on holiday?
Yes. A little bit. I learned there, and normally when I stay with the team, I learn something too.
Phenomenal, gracias.
Thank you.
It's a little bit strange to see you riding races like Tour of Flanders, Ghent-Wevelgem, and maybe Paris-Roubaix, because we think of you. We always think of you more of a rider from Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Yeah, but I'm also riding there, and last year I did it. I started in Pays Basco, and I did Flanders, and after Flanders I was sick, so I had to quit in Pays Basco. So, but I was very good in Amstel, so we said this year no Pays Basco, and just for riding training, maybe it's good to ride here and then do nothing till Amstel.
Do you enjoy the Tour of Flanders?
Enjoy is a great word. It's a nice experience. It's one of the hardest races, and the public is so great, but it's not really enjoying. It's so hard and it's so nervous. So.
Okay, good luck today.
Thank you.
Johan, can I just ask you one quick question? Johan, it's great to see you here at Ghent-Wevelgem. Maybe the last time we're going to see you. Is it a difficult time for you ending your career, or is the form still good?
No, it's not so difficult. I decided last year to stop after Paris-Roubaix. So after 18 years as professional, it's not difficult to stop.
The form was very good in the Tour of Flanders. It was a strange race. Do you think you've got a good chance coming into Paris-Roubaix?
The condition is okay, but we have to see Sunday how the weather is, the tactic, and also we need good luck Sunday.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Well, Roger, Ghent-Wevelgem, nasty weather. It's about typical for the course, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's going to be a typical Ghent-Wevelgem today. There was so much wind, and well, it looks like the rain's going to come again today. So yeah, it's going to be a hard race, but it's actually good, because when there's no wind, then it's quite difficult to predict this race. So with the wind now as strong as it's going to blow the race to pieces, I think.
Team are looking very confident, and I think they'll be looking for the win today.
Yeah, I hope so, because we all sort of a little bit underperformed at the weekend on Sunday, so it's our chance to get a little bit of revenge today from the Tour of Flanders. So yeah, the team's really motivated, and also the headquarters of Mr. Bookmaker is very close to the start. So yeah, we're all motivated. Good luck. Cheers. Thanks very much. Having a good week so far.
Francesco, in moeilijke Ghent-Wevelgem, we wensen je veel succes.
Hey mate, I won't get too close because there's a bit of a problem with a broken rib.
Yeah, Don't make me laugh too much, Paul.
It was very difficult for you, the Tour of Flanders, because these are the races that you love. These are the races that you want to perform well in. And having a nasty accident like that just before the start just makes it that bit tougher.
Yeah, I mean, mentally I was still, you know, I can get through this. It's only a broken rib, but as soon as we hit the pave, it wasn't funny. I just couldn't get any power down. So I'll have a go today, but not sure about Sunday. Probably not.
Yeah, what does that mean for Sunday, really?
Realistically, got a broken rib and it hurts when you go over cobbles. So, you know, if I try and get through Sunday, it's just going to break it even worse and delay the rest of the season. So I might give that a miss and then just try and attack Amstel.
Is it difficult for the team to try and keep the morale with all the stuff that's going on around them?
Well, I mean, it's difficult enough. We've got just riders injured and, you know, the other stuff we just kind of no one really talks about. No one, you know, a couple of isolated cases and we're just trying to forget about it and get on with our job. But at the moment, we've just got a lot of guys out with injuries and broken things.
Okay, good luck.
Thanks.
So the riders now heading towards a very dark cloud as they leave Deinze for their journey out to the coast. And we'll probably see most of the action when they swing back towards the 2 climbs of the Kemmelberg. And our first chance now to catch up with the riders as they head out towards the first climb of the Kemmelberg. Rather chilly, 9 degrees, 48 degrees Fahrenheit is the weather. So 73 kilometers to go in the 66th Ghent Wevelgem as we're heading to the 2 sections of the course which always decides the final selection before the run out to the finish in Wevelgem. And we've got 9 riders still trying to get clear of the field. Going to be a tough ask, and the fact the weather doesn't seem to be too intending to go away this time. The showers are staying as quite an on-downpour. There's Canavan at the front. The field has got them all back, and a general coming together again now. I think when you're in the weather conditions just like this here, and we're going into the small villages now, this is West Outer, all around the Kemmel. And while we stay in this area, I think the rain will stay with us before it might go off a little bit as we run away finally, but they could be there now for the next hour and a half in this rain. As again, Quick-Step, I think, anxious to make amends for what happened last year. Looks like Pizzato again. Is it pushing on here?
Well, Quick-Step are looking to try and do something very special in this race. West Outer is after 133 kilometers of racing, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't look for a move on the Kemmelberg coming from a man by the name of Johan Museo. The amazing thing about Johan Museo is he's very unpredictable. His form, I think, was pretty good in the Tour of Flanders at the weekend, although it was a very difficult race. I think all of the big contenders were very much in the same boat. They just didn't have the advantage over everyone else. And most people are thinking that Johan Museo will hold back and wait for the Paris-Roubaix race at the weekend. But who knows, he may well have a crack over the Kemmelberg on a day like this, because these are the conditions when he would really excel in.
And of course, really, I'm not too sure that Johan has got the form to win Paris-Roubaix again, as we've seen him do in the past on a couple of occasions, because age might have caught up with him. He's made the decision to retire in 2 weeks' time. So he's just got 3 races left to go now, including this one. And this would be the one I would think he might try for. He's never won this one, which is always a surprise.
He's never won this race. He's tried on a number of occasions. He's won the Tour of Flanders on 3 occasions. He's won Paris-Roubaix 3 times. And if he can just add this one at the end of his career with just 3 races left to go, well, I don't think he'd be too dissatisfied. The other races that he'd be looking at to finish off his career will be, of course, Paris-Roubaix at the weekend, and that will be followed up with the Grand Prix de l'Escaut. Although he will have a small criterium in his town of Histel, which is reported Mario Cipollini will come to. And interesting to know that Mario Cipollini really seems to be having a hard time finding his form this year, and I wonder, Phil, if he's actually added 1 year too many onto his career.
Well, it's always a wonder when riders try to stay around that little bit longer, but I've got a feeling that Mario Cipollini's trying to delay his good form this year, because he's promised he will ride the Tour de France and he will reach the finish. And if he's flying fit at this time of the year, normally he's going over the top by July.
This is the small climb just round the back of the Red Mountain. Takes them right up along the border of France. If they took a right-hand turn at the top of this climb, they would go right into France. But in fact, the race will turn left and head out towards Loker, Dranouter, the Monteberg, and the Kemmelberg for the first time. It's a very difficult climb, and in fact, it goes right up by the windmill, just on the top of this ridge of hills in the southern part of France, in the Heuvelland area.
Well, certainly these boys are hitting it very hard now. This is the first weakener, or the first chance to weaken the peloton, which is what's left of it just now. as they continue on the climb here.
This is the Mr. Bookmaker team on the front. They're obviously thinking about them, and Roger Hammond, who is in excellent form at this time of the year. He's had a very good start to the season, and also Jeremy Hunt riding this afternoon.
There's trouble here. I think it's Sven Kraus who has a flat tyre for Gerolsteiner. That's a bad time to get a puncture.
It certainly is, because it's a very difficult time to try and get yourself back into the main field. This looks like Peter Farazijn on the front. Always a very aggressive rider from Team Cofidis as he makes the left-hand turn. Just over his shoulder there, if he was to take the right, it's not very far down to France. I think it's only about 500 metres.
Well, we've gone the right way today. Tricky all adverse camber bend this, though, with the rain coming down like it is, but they look as though they're all making the turn quite safely as we start the circuit very shortly. 70 kilometres to go. That's about all the riders now still in contention here in Ghent Wevelgem. Lamprey sitting here in the back, staying in our hotel, Lamprey, this week. We've been watching them go out training every day. And I think fair to say, rather glad we weren't professional bike riders, because the weather in Belgium has been rather cold, very, very windy, exceptionally windy, I think. Looks like Magnus Bagstedt just passing through camera.
Yeah, good to see Magnus riding at the top end of the sport again after a couple of years sort of swimming around trying to find his place in the game. And I'm quite happy to see him up there at the top, because Magnus is a great bike rider. In fact, he's told me he was moving back to live in Wales at the end of this season, because he's a little bit fed up with the weather in this part of Belgium.
Yeah, well, he's married to a Welsh woman, and his family's there, so it's a very good area to train in South Wales. Mountains all around him, or you can find the flat roads, but it's flying out of Cardiff to wherever you want to go. Now, this is the Red Mountain, the Rodeberg. 728 metres in length. It's not long, but this is now a stepping stone which will lead us eventually to the Monteberg and onto the Kemmelberg itself.
Good acceleration coming here, as everybody now is trying to get themselves off the front end of the main field before they drop down into the town of Loka. But you can see everybody now is seeing the possibility of a lead as they go up to the Kemmelberg, which is I think today is going to be very important to get round that corner at the Kemmelberg in the first 4 or 5 places, because we might see 1 or 2 riders actually having to get off and walk.
Well, if your wheels start spinning on the cobblestones, then there's no way you're going to get up that mountain today. And as always, there's a massive crowd. There was 10,000 people officially estimated at the start. You know, no matter how many times we come to Belgium, we are always amazed and in awe of the number of people who love the sport of cycling here and know their riders off by heart as well. And I think we're going to find a huge crowd up on the top of the Kemmelberg despite the weather today. This is Joe Plankett now having a go at the front. 1 or 2 people talking about him as a likely winner, but the team themselves backing Roger Hammond, who was 8th in this race last year.
Well, Hammond has had a very solid start to the season. He hasn't got himself any big wins in his career, but he's the kind of rider who on a day like this in these kind of weather conditions has got the possibility of taking out a win in a race like Ghent Wevelgem. We have to go back very many years to see a British winner of Ghent Wevelgem, and that was Barry Hoban. Although my mate Sean Yates got pretty close on one occasion, in fact, and he finished 2nd behind Gerrit Solleveld. And I think to this day he kicks himself that he never got over him in the sprint.
Absolutely. And Sean now acting director sportif for the CSC team in this event, and will be willing his riders on for a result. But these 4 riders beginning to get clear just now. Nuyens rather, from the Quick Step team, and there's been a tumble on the left of the road here, and 1 or 2 riders have gone down, probably touched the side. Just seeing who they are here.
Well, that's one of the big riders from there. Looks like it's Tom Bonen there may well have had an incident, because the team have stopped immediately at the side of the road to change a wheel.
Well, I think it is Tom Bonen.
This is Kevin Hulsmans who's passing the wheel across.
Yeah.
I didn't get a full glimpse there. There was a little bit of water on the lens, but I think if that sort of panic was on board for David Timon Quickstep, it probably was Tom Bonen, and he's a pre-race favourite for this team.
Well, this is Hulsmans, whose job is going to be tough now to get back into the action.
Wilfred Peters just jumping out of the car to pick up the wheel that was left at the side of the road. Peters having had a long and illustrious career, one of the lieutenants to Johan Museo for many, many years. Tough job here for Hulsmans to get himself back into the race, but he will try and use the team cars a little bit, and I think the referees will probably look the other way as he winds his way back through that long line of cars behind the peloton. But you can see 67 kilometers to go now. Everyone's starting to get just that little bit more nervous because they realize in around about 6 kilometers they're going to hit the big climb of the Kemmelberg. That's after they've had a sort out over the Monteberg, which is just 2 kilometers away.
Monteberg is a sort of main road climb, in as much that it's got no cobblestones on it, but it can hurt. And a short descent and a left turn, and up we go up the Kemmelberg. And that breakaway is developing just at the moment at the front. Looks like Quick-Step are trying to get more control of this race now, but
I think they're probably trying to back it off just a little bit. They will have the information coming through to them that their man at the back has had a very quick flat tyre change. Tom Boonen, I would expect to get back into the main field quite quickly, but what they'll try and do is drag him round the outside on the slopes of the Monteberg. Gert Omloop and Roger Hammond have got themselves into this move. Gert Omloop, the Belgian national champion, and just in front of him Roger Hammond, the British national champion.
Two wearing the national jerseys today. Hammond is having a wonderful season. He hasn't won a race, but he's finished in the top 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Reckons he's having the best start to the year. He was 8th in this event last year, so we are hoping that he'll be able to deliver the goods possibly. 1974 was the last time a British rider won this event.
Good glimpse here. It looks to me as if Gert Omloop is having a bit of a hard time with the bad weather conditions, though. You can just see how difficult and cold it is out there, because these wintry conditions, Phil, are really being aggravated by the fact that the rain and the cold wind is coming right in off the North Sea. But it has, this acceleration, forced a group of around about 15 or 16 riders off the front end as they go through Dranouter. They'll drop down slightly and then they'll begin the climb of the Monteberg, which, as you said, is a main road, good surface climb, but at the top it really does hurt a bit. As you know, you have to be in good position, because coming up very quickly after that is the left-hand turn up to the Kemmelberg, and these guys realise that, and they're all panicking just a little bit for the moment. Kopfende Extra, this is the front end of the race. A lot of gesticulation at the back. Get working, let everybody work together. We've got a good situation here. We've got a gap over the front end of the main field, and this is a big advantage, especially today with these roads being very slippy on the slopes of the Kemmelberg. Good gap, actually.
It is, well, it is a good start, and it's come under extreme effort, which always means it's a bit harder to close. The riders are regrouping at the back here, and there's a lot of teammates also trying to just back off this race just now, so they must have men up in that leading group. About 19 riders in front. There they are in the distance. These are perfect attacking roads when they snake like this, and you're out of sight very quickly. Road conditions are not good. As riders now start to make their moves, this looks like it's one of the Demeanor Vacanzi riders, I think it was, or was it Fletcher?
Fletcher. It was Fletcher. He's really reveling in these conditions. A winner of a stage of the Tour de France last year in the outskirts of Toulouse, when he gave us that very significant bow and arrow salute as he crossed the finishing line, because Fletcher is the Spanish word for arrow, and many people think he may well be riding like an arrow here this afternoon. A very famous nickname in years gone by was the Flemish Arrow. Patrick Sercou, whose son for many years organised this race, has brought it back up to the level that we're seeing here this afternoon.
Now, as they continue here on the Monteberg, a lot of riders just throwing the weight in and then dropping into the group here. It's a panic situation just now. There's no organisation in that leading group. There's the peloton, what's left of it now. Their time's in 11 seconds. But there's going to be a big battle on the Kemmelberg first time.
It's going to be very confusing on the Kemmelberg too, because several riders in that leading group, there's Tom Boonen, you see, just getting himself back through the riders who are being dropped. It's been a hard ride for him to pick his way through these riders who are dropping off the back end of the group. As we get up to the summit of the Monteberg, he'll be panicking just a little bit, and he'll have to try over the next kilometre or so get himself to the front end of this group, but he has no teammates with him at all.
It was a bad time to puncture. It's been a tough chase. He's done well to come back on the top of this climb, but he's only got a short descent and a left turn, and we're on the actual cobble climb of the Kemmelberg. That's going to be unfortunate for Tom, I think, at the moment, but I think he may have the ability to get back up to the leaders. We'll see. Sebastian Rosselard was the rider just went through there for Relaxed Body Soul.
Big strong rider. This is a big advantage here for these men who are going to take the left-hand turn into the Kemmel in first position. and they will avoid the confusion in the main field. These guys are looking over their shoulders just to see what the gap is back to the group behind, because they know that they will begin to accelerate. But they've got a very serious advantage, and I think the fact that they're going to be first into the Kemmelberg this afternoon with these weather conditions will give these men a serious chance to try and open up the gap.
Well, the descent will be absolutely treacherous now. It is such a violent descent on these cobbles. You cannot control the direction of your bicycle. You've got to virtually shut your eyes and just drop down the mountain, because if you try to change direction,
that's what it's like. That's what it's like in the dry, but today it's going to be even worse than that. It's one of those climbs which are so violent on the downhill section that it's as if your eyeballs are actually vibrating in the sockets and you can't see at all. I remember one time going down, I had 2 flat tires at the same time, and I've got absolutely no idea how I was able to keep the bike upright, but I did. But I tell you what, the heart rate went up to about 250.
And that's 2 beats higher than normal, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, just about, just about. The main field, you know, are not too far behind there. They've actually accelerated pretty nicely in the last kilometre or so, and they realise how important it is to pull themselves back up to the tail end of this group. But there will be some serious confusion once we hit the Kemmelberg for the first time, and then we've got that big loop out into the country before they come back and do it all over again.
Well, there's no doubt that Quick-Step have put 3 or 4 riders at the front of that bunch to try and discourage the chase while Tom Boonen got back. Once they realised Boonen was back towards the top there, here we go now, left turn up to the Kemmel. And then they started the chase now to try and get onto the tail of this group as they start the Kemmelberg. Massive crowd, as we expected. The weather makes absolutely no difference. If anything, it makes the crowd even bigger, because they know it's here where they will see the excitement of the day. And with Ghent Wevelgem, they climb it not once but twice.
Very difficult climb to begin with. It starts up at a fairly easy gradient, but the unfortunate thing about this climb, if you're a bike rider, it gets steeper and steeper as you approach the summit. Kaseya means there's 600 meters of cobblestones here in the Kemmelberg, and there's George Hincapie right in the middle now. I wonder where he came from.
Well, it's the first time I've seen him, but he looks pretty cool, set there in the middle. He's concentrating well. He's won it before. He told us a couple of days ago he didn't want to give all of his effort to doing well in this race, but if he found himself in the right place, he will continue with it.
Well, I never saw him at all. In fact, I think there has been a regrouping there, because there's a large number of riders here, and Hincapie looking very comfortable there on the left-hand side, just ticking the pedals over. You know, when you've got the form, everything is just that little bit easier. There's Magnus Backstedt coming through as well. A little bit further back, it looks as if we've got Michael Bogert as well, riding races which are not to his ability. And there's Servais Kanavan coming through as well. A lot of names are a long way down the bunch here. I haven't seen Johan Museo just yet. I wonder if he's not enjoying these conditions towards the latter part of his career.
Well, there's no doubt the peloton did get on just before they made that left turn, and the man to profit was George Hincapie, the big favourite for many people, as he makes his way up now near the front of the race. Pain over for the first lap, almost, for the riders at the front anyway. Then the hazard of the descent. It's not so many years ago when they had a massive pile-up coming down this descent. Half of the race going to hospital, I think.
Johan Museo was up there as well. He was about 10th or 15th position, so he had got around the breakaway there, and he had managed to pull himself just that little bit further. There's Tom Boonen halfway down the main field. There's still a long way to go before they come back and attack this climb for the second time, but I'll tell you one thing, with that first indication, George Hincapie is looking pretty good here, and if you get a situation where you've got a chance to win a race like Ghent Wevelgem, then you've got to go for it, and I think George will.
Well, he's in a wonderful position right now, because we usually get the split on this first climb and then the pursuit on the second climb. But I'm not so sure anybody's got away this time up, because the peloton were getting on just at the start of the climb. Here we are. This is the way down now.
This is scary. This is an unbelievable descent. You see that bottle just jumping out there. It's because of the vibrations coming right up through the machine. Hincapie looking calm and collected there, not panicking, not taking any risks. And it looks to me as if a little bit further back there is Johan Museo. There's the World Championship bands on his arms. The Lion of Flanders, and I'm sure and I actually hope that one time before he retires, Phil, he can roar once again.
Well, if you look at the faces, there's a lot of fear in the face of these riders. They're concentrating. They can't take either hand off the handlebars. I saw one rider go down there with his sunglasses perched on the very end of his nose. There's nothing he could do about it. The Lambau Credit rider here has got his foot out for a little bit of guidance on the way down. The camera belies just how steep this is, but it's around about 25% the drop over these cobbles, and extremely dangerous. Now, just seeing the T-Mobile riders go through, those mauve colours there, just to remind you that, in fact, not amongst the riders today is Stefan Westerman, the brilliant winner of Tour de Flanders a few days ago. saving himself in the hope he can go one place better and get the win in Paris-Roubaix on Sunday.
6 men at the front end of the group now starting to form a very serious breakaway. This is what it looks like going down. It is horrendous. There is a crash on the right-hand side. In fact, it looks as if somebody's gone down rather badly, but the race doctor will be there on hand quite quickly.
Is that a spectator?
No, it's a
bike rider. Bike rider, I beg your pardon. It's a Rabobank rider too.
It's very difficult
the
to get
rain's
in
on
there
the
and
screen.
see.
It's so hard to see.
It's terrible to see.
This is Matt Hayman. It's Matty Hayman.
Well, he was at the front end of the field. It is number 134, so it is Matt Hayman. That's his bike on the right-hand side of the road there. And this just goes to show it is a very difficult climb. It's almost impossible on a day like this to actually walk up this climb. It is so slippery. And I always have to take my hat off to these guys getting their bikes down there at 45 kilometers an hour. This is a move off the front end of the main field. Now, this man was in the leading breakaway, Sebastian Rosseler. And not too far away from him will be the counterattack starting to come forward. The second Achtervolkers, the second chasers. There is Magnus Backstedt. He rode very well up that climb there. And we'll see reforming here, I would think, of a fairly serious group at the front end of the main race. There's Roger Hammond.
Sign of the cold weather here for Johan Museo, but he's done well to come up into this group, and that is a good sign.
Johan Museo, what a tough bike rider. That's Peter Varazijn, the Cofidis rider on the far side. Tristan Hoffman, a very experienced pro as well, moving in there. And also moving up for Quick Step Davitamont. Another man, looks like that might have been Wilfred Kretschens, who'll be looking after the presence of Johan Museo. But I have a feeling we might see a general rejoining, but I would say today, Phil, the temperature, although it's supposed to be 9 degrees Celsius, for those riders out there, it is going to feel like freezing conditions.
Once this rain bites through the clothing, then it is going to be extremely cold, probably feeling the effects of just above freezing, actually, today, 32 Fahrenheit. And it looks as though the weather's going to stay bad in the area of the Kemmelberg throughout. They'll be coming out of the rain as they race towards the finish, and they might start to get some life into those rather frozen limbs. But right now, the men at the front are going to be the ones profiting most, because they're continually being sprayed here. This is still the leader here, Seb Rosseler from the Relaxed Body Sol team. These are the premier chasers. Their riding skills always amaze me, because these roads are glacial now.
There's a pretty serious split off the front end of the peloton as well. If this group can get itself organised, we could find a situation where we're going to be chasing all the way down to the finish in Wevelgem. A few more riders trying to scramble back up to the race here as they realise how important this strategic area in the small part of Belgium known as the Heuvelland is, because this repetitive nature of the climbs is so difficult. It's a country which is generally very flat in this part, especially the Flanders, but once you go up and down these hills and you throw in a little bit of rain and sleet and wind coming in off the North Sea, it really does make it a difficult bike race. Rosseler has not got that much advantage over the main field, and I would think right now the sensible thing for him to do would be to sit up and wait for this group, especially when you know that big heads of state like George Hincapie and Johan Museo are in the group.
This is a very nice sized group. This is a working group that could go clear now and could be the decisive move. So often in Ghent Wevelgem, it is the first lap when the strong men get to the front, the second lap when they consolidate, and on the run into the finish they start attacking one another. Wise move by Rosseler here, waiting for the race now. He's done his bit, getting away on the climb of the Kemmel. And now here comes the charge as the riders start to come back together again. And it's a nice working group, this, as they start to go through. Just trying to see if I can see anybody of note. It doesn't look at the minute as though Roger Hammond has made the decisive split, which is a little bit of a surprise, I think, because Roger is a rider who knows this very well. This is Lorenzo Benucci of the Lambrau Credit on the left. He's up here.
Theoretically, a little bit further down that group, we should see George Hincapie, because Hincapie was at the front end of the group as they went over the Kemmelberg with Johan Museo. That's Magnus Backstedt on the left-hand side. He will enjoy these weather conditions here, riding for the new team of Alessio. And looks to me as if Matty Hayman is very seriously injured there, because going back to the Kemmelberg, he's actually being put into the ambulance, and I wonder if that's possibly a fracture. He'll be rushed down, I would expect, to the hospital here in Kortrijk, or maybe they might look down towards the hospital in Ypres. But that's rather sad news for Matty Hayman, because he was looking pretty good out on the roads at Ghent Wevelgem this afternoon.
The way he was lying there, it could well have been a fracture to the leg. Let's hope it's not too serious when he gets checked over in hospital. Anyway, 57 kilometers to go. The leading group has made the move, and A strong group it is. There's plenty of riders willing to work. Surprisingly, Paul, when you spoke to Magnus Bagstedt this morning, he seemed full of confidence, didn't he?
Very confident. I think he actually started to ride well at the end of last season, having put in a superb Giro d'Italia. He won the Inter-Giro competition in Italy, and I think that gave him the confidence to come back and ride at the top end of the sport. And he's a rider who in the early part of his career, let's not forget, in fact, got himself a very good win in the Tour de France, a stage win when he was riding for Crédit Agricole. He is the kind of rider who's got the strength and ability for races like this. And I think he was looking up the skies, Phil, and thinking, well, this is a good day for me.
And it is clear there, wearing number 1, the winner last year, on tremendous form. Looking extremely good. Tristan Hoffmann here, another good man for the move. And Bagstedt looking down at his gears. We've got Jan Kursipuu, the sprinter. They won't like to take him to the finish yet.
It's good to see Jan Kursipuu. He's another rider who one day or another will get himself a big win in a race like this Ghent Wevelgem. There was Roger Hammond, so Hammond did make the junction here as well. So he obviously used his cyclocross skills on the descent there to bridge a gap of 10 or 15 seconds. As also there is the Lion of Flanders, Johan Museeuw, wearing number 37. World Championship bands on his arm, and he's a man who for many, many years has threatened to retire. And I think right now this is probably the last time we will see him here in Ghent Wevelgem, because he's decided now that this is seriously the last year that he will take part in competitive professional cycling, and I'm sure he'll be around the peloton for a couple of years to come because he's got a lot of experience to offer.
Well, there's a break, about 24 riders in this leading group just now, and I don't think they're going to make the mistake of allowing the rest of the field back into the action here. The peloton is split into at least 3 bunches in the chase. The cold weather is beginning to get through those old bones by the look of it here now, as the riders jump on. I've seen a couple of good sprinters make the bridge. I'm rather surprised to see Jimmy Casper up here as well, but he could present us with a good sprint if it comes to that.
There's Laszlo Bodrogi on the front, former champion of Hungary, and also a former champion of Hungary in the individual time trial. Quick-Step Davitamon have got a number of riders in this leading group, and obviously they're not waiting at all for Tom Boonen, because I didn't see Boonen making this leading group of around about 24 riders. So I think Team Tactics will move across to try and get Johan Museeuw in a win. It's the kind of day that Johan Museeuw will enjoy. He's a tough bike rider, 38 years of age. He's not worried at all about a little bit of cold in the bones, is he?
No, and in all honesty, I think that Museeuw will be the sort of rider who would have hoped that the press would project Boonen as the favourite on the team to win, because I think if I was Museeuw, this is the race I would have chosen to try and win. It's not the power on him, not the pressure on him as Paris-Roubaix or Flanders, and he's won those races. It would be absolutely marvellous if he could take this one out on his last attempt of his career.
Tough bike rider. I'd like to see him get the win if he can, but there's an awful long way to go to the finish, still 55 kilometres, and there's still another ascension of the Kemmelberg for these riders to face up to. Bit of confusion out in the open road as they're trying to get themselves organised into groups to chase and pull the race back together. And it is really rather strange, because as soon as they pull themselves back together, they'll have to face up to the Kemmelberg again. There's a 22-second gap between that leading group of riders and the chase group here, the Achtervolkers. I thought I caught a glimpse there, just down to the right-hand side. You can see Robbie Hunter, the sprinter from Team Rabobank. I didn't see too many Rabobank riders in that leading group of 20.
No, they might have been rather balked by the fact they lost Heyman there on that descent. And also the Lotto boys have missed out wholesalely too. Their big man, Leon Van Bon, has not closed across that gap, so they're having to chase. And judging by the fact Seiko are getting in, I'm not sure whether Seiko are blocking or attacking in second place here right now. Looks like the big figure of Pieri there.
He'll be looking for the win if he can. He's obviously trying to think about the upcoming Paris-Roubaix, where he's had tasted success in the past, but on a day like this, it really does become a question of survival with these weather conditions, and it's really very often the bravest man who gets himself the win, and that's the sort of thing that Johan Museeuw is probably calculating on here. He's hoping to get round to the Kemmelberg again with an advantage over the main field, so he doesn't have the confusion of trying to ride at the front end of the main field and battle for that left-hand turn, which is a very tactical point of the race.
You know, I think that second group is already beaten, because they're not organised at all in the chase back. I've counted around 24 riders in this leading group, and there's some big names have made that split, not least Johan Museeuw. And he doesn't often misread a race. That was his strongest point of his career, was he was a brilliant race reader. He knew when to make the effort, he knew when to sit back and watch. And I think that'll be his strongest point if he ever does come into team management. and gets hold of people like Tom Bowler. Now, talk of the man himself, here he is, back with the team car. Maybe the rain getting through, causing the gears to slip, although I think it's his brake this time.
Problem with the gears, with the brake, yes, at the back there. Now, it's always a worry for a rider here when he gets looked after by the neutral service vehicle. This car here is not his own team car looking after him, so it's obviously quite a serious problem for Johan Museeuw, and he's going to have to try and stay in contact with that leading group. And this is a very difficult moment in the race here, because there's just 23 seconds between them, and that's a bad problem. He's got a serious problem here. I think he's going to stop.
Oh dear me, I think he's in big trouble, but he's had to break off from the situation to make that left-hand turn. I don't think the problem's been solved yet for Johan. Not what he doesn't want is to face up to the Kemmelberg with only one brake, that's for sure. Decision time maybe. I'm wondering if he did. No, they're still going to. They're just just adjusting there at the moment, Paul. He may have buckled his wheel here.
He could have buckled his wheel. He's got a very stiff rim on there, and with a very deep rim as well, so he could have banged it on the descent of the Kemmelberg. This, I hope, I'd like to know who's driving that car there, because he is one of the neutral service vehicles, and Johan Museeuw seems fairly relaxed to allow the mechanic to get out of the car. And I would think what is happening is the brake is actually touching on the brake pad there. The wheel is touching on the brake pad, and that's causing a bit of consternation for Johan, because that is not an easy thing to do. If you remember, after the Tour de France last year, we sat down with Lance Armstrong, who said to us he'd ridden the whole of the stage of the Alpe d'Huez with his rear brake catching, and that's why he wasn't riding all that well when he got there.
Yeah, absolutely right. And Johan is just waiting to see how this develops now. He's got a little respite before we start the last climbs on the final circuit here. There is teammates driving at the front. I think Quick Step are still smarting over making such a mess of the Tour de Flanders that they're trying to put matters to right, and they've got all the guns up in this leading group.
They're looking for the gap here, and in fact that gap is starting to extend. It's interesting to note that last year's winners in this leading group as well, Andreas Clear, George Hincapie on the far side in the dark blue jersey for US Postal, riding sensibly on a day like this, eating all of the time, keeping his energy levels topped up, because you can lose an awful lot of energy because of the cold weather conditions. Frankie Hoy, who rode well in the Tour of Flanders at the weekend, is also in this leading breakaway, as is Tristan Hoffmann. Further down, it's good to see the Frenchman, as you spotted. Jimmy Casper, Phil, had managed to get in there as well, but I think the danger man for everybody in this group has got to be Jan Kirsipuu, number 205, the former champion of Estonia.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens on the second lap, because we have to sort out on the first lap to get the first group away, and then the boys will try to split up again as they climb. But this has now become something of a major operation.
It's a serious problem, and what the mechanic now is trying to do, he's actually trying to loosen off the nut which holds the cable. Now, you've got to be a serious bike rider to be able to do this in weather conditions like this, wet roads, in a breakaway situation, 30 seconds up on the chasing group. And that is the problem, and what is happening is the brake is actually touching on the rim, and they're trying to loosen off the cable now.
Get some more length out the cable.
Oh, that's a bit tricky.
He's
and a bit
got to watch
dodgy.
his fingers. It's not for the unnervy to watch this, because you know, that's a really dangerous operation at this stage.
It's a pity the team car can't get by right now, because if the team car could get by, all he needs is just to swing across onto one of his team bikes. Each team car in the race will have between 5 and 6 bikes on top of it, and you can be absolutely certain that one of those bikes will belong to Johan Museeuw. He's at the back here. He's having a very hard time. There's a second vehicle managed to come up there, and I think that is the Quick Step Davitamon team, and they'll be able to sort that problem out quite quickly. With the gap here at 34 seconds, well, I tell you what, Phil, that's not 34 seconds at all, because they are slowly starting to pull back. These men are probably only 15 seconds in arrears.
And that's a reasonable sized group as well that's coming up again. The peloton at 121, they haven't given up yet. This was the front peloton that split into two. We thought they'd all regrouped at the bottom of the Kemmelberg. Maybe they didn't. But this is the first split after the climb.
Well, there are all the team cars there behind the group. They won't be allowed forward just right now because of the fact that the gap is just that little bit too small. We're getting an official time check of 33 seconds, but the way we saw it there, I have a feeling it was a lot less than that. This is the Group 2 Achtervolkers, the second group on the road, and there's some serious names in here as well, keeping the pace high on the front end of the peloton. There's Rudy Kemna, just in 4th or 5th position there, the champion of Holland. Saw him in the early part of the year, riding very well in the Tour Down Under.
Yeah, he's quite an old man these days, but he still produces the goods, and he's still a very strong bike rider. And I think with Johan Museeuw, looks as though he's pedaling back onto the bunch now. I think it's the fact that Museeuw has had that problem, and the Quick Step boys have been riding at the front of this breakaway to slow it down. That's allowed back into the race the second group on the road.
Well, let's see whether or not it was the team car. The team car must have forced themselves past the race referee there, or maybe been given permission to come forward because of the fact that that was a very serious problem for Johan Museo, and it really was a pretty good job of work being done by that mechanic, because if you want to try and adjust a nut like that at speeds around about 50 kilometers an hour in wet weather conditions, this is Tom Boonen at the back as well. So a little bit of interest going on. This must be the second group on the road here. We're not at the back of the Johan Museo group, because this is the group with Tom Boonen, Magnus Baxter. This must be group number 1. So Boonen must have managed to reintegrate as well.
I think if we pull back, I think we're going to find that group has already bridged, because that's an awful lot more than 24 riders down there just now. Our cameras preoccupy a little bit with the Museo situation, but I think the first 2 groups have bridged, and there's now a second group, which was the third group just behind the second group, is now at 34 seconds. So this could be an unusual Ghent Wevelgem this year, as the field is slowly but surely regrouping. Not something we see happen.
Quick-Step very much dominant. They've got a lot of riders in the front end of this group. They've just gone through the small town there of West Outer, which means they will start that little climb again just on the far side of the Black Mountain and the Red Mountain. Once they get to the top of that, they'll drop down into Loka, and they'll be facing up to the Kemmelberg again.
Drogi setting the pace there now. Museo and Canavan, they're all getting themselves back up into the action here. Museo still just hanging in, but they look as though the Quick-Step boys have come to make amends to me, Paul, this year after the terrible mistakes they made in the Tour of Flanders. They've got a lot of men in the action this time.
A lot of men in the action. They've certainly got a lot of domination at the front end. There's a small move here coming in. This looks like Nico Matan. He's been caught out in the second break of the day. Here's his move on the right-hand side of the road, just coming out of the small town of West Outer over a little cobblestone section. He's accelerated. What he's trying to do is to use this climb to bridge a 30-second gap. It's a very difficult thing to do, but he's obviously panicking somewhat.
Well, he obviously senses he's got to get across that gap. They want to get across and stop the chasing so they can have a few deep breaths before they start their little climbs and back up the Kemmelberg again, because once over the top of the Kemmelberg, it is every man for himself all the way down to the finish. And it's very unusual for the field to come to the finish in any sizable group. There's one rider there trying to bridge the gap. Here he is, Nico Matan, riding quite well at the moment too. He's got good form. He had a very good Tour of Flanders. There was a lot of good rides done in Flanders. At the end of the day, it was all to no avail for virtually all of them. But there was a lot of good individual performances last weekend.
I think a lot of people, though, do admit that the winner, Stefan Weissermann, was a very strong bike rider, and one day or another, he was always going to get himself a big win in one of these classics, either Tour of Flanders or Paris-Roubaix. Paris-Roubaix is a race that I think he's always really enjoyed, and probably because he tried so hard in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, I think he's decided to miss out on Ghent Wevelgem this week, just so they can prepare psychologically and physically what is going to be an attempt to try and be a double. And it doesn't happen very often. Peter van Petegem did it last year, but I'd be quite surprised if he's able to do that.
Well, he's been there before. He's nearly tasted victory. He's been second, and why not a double for the Germans? He was the first German since Rudi Altig in '64, who in turn was the only other German to win Tour of Flanders. There is George Hincapie with his glasses looking our way, and in front of him in the white is Roger Hammond, the British champion.
Just sitting there nice and comfortable for the moment. He won't be in that position when this race gets round to the Kemmelberg next time. We're inside of 50 kilometers to go, and it's still a 30-second advantage for this group over what remains of the peloton. I would think everybody else right now is pretty much out of the race, but this breakaway group here is very much under the control of Quick-Step Davitamon. They've done exactly what they needed to do. They've taken this race by the horns. They've got complete control over the front end of the peloton, and this is a very brave move here. You know, Nico Matan has got himself halfway across. The rest of that group have just gone around the corner, but he needs to make contact before they get to the flatter part of the course and they start to open up the throttle again.
Well, this is the little twisting climb that Matan is hoping could springboard him up to the leaders. He's got midway. I'm not so sure he's going to close the gap, because the hills come in quick succession now. I think he was right in trying to make the effort, because I don't think that group behind, even though they're only timed at just half a minute, are going to catch that front group, because once we're onto the Kemmel again, that group will certainly split, and then like rabbits they'll race for home.
Well, he's read the race correctly. He knows that this is a very serious move off the front end, but look at that. It's a group of at least 20 riders. And for one man to get across, it's a real tall order, even if your name is Nico Matin. He needed to get across at least 20 seconds of that gap with his first explosive effort. But what's happened was he got 10 or 15 seconds across, and then he's just found himself getting right onto the front end of the saddle. He's on the rivet, as they would say in cycling jargon. And unless these guys slow down somewhat, then he's not really going to make the junction.
And last year's winner is in the group, Andreas Klier, who also had a great finish in the Tour de Flanders. He was 6th in that event, so he's got the form. George Hincapie, a previous winner, is here, tacked onto the back, doing what he promised he would do, not make any serious effort. He said he didn't want to throw all of his force away for Sunday, because this year, having been so close in Paris-Roubaix over the years, this is going to be his big shot at it. And he's not going to waste his energy in Ghent Wevelgem, but he's got himself in the breakaway. He's now sitting at the back, seeing what develops.
Wilfried Kretschen's there in second position. These guys have got a serious control on the front end of the peloton. That's Laszlo Bodrogi in first position. Hasselbacher, René Hasselbacher's in this group as well for Gerolsteiner. So if it does come down to a sprint, there are some very rapid finishes here. If you remember, Hasselbacher last year in the Tour de France ended up without any trousers in the finishing straight.
That's right, he got a bit too rough in the sprint in the end, and the boys had to sort of push him to one side by the look of it.
I notice here from the list of riders that's being communicated to us that Tom Bonen isn't in the group. I thought he might have got across in all the confusion a few moments ago, but he certainly hasn't been identified here. It's very difficult in these weather conditions to keep a tab just on exactly who is in the break, and the way these men are riding as they come up to the Rodeberg, a small climb, around about 15% at its steepest part, but only an average of 5.5%. I think you can see right now, that looks to me, Phil, as if Tom Bonen is there. They're not identifying him, but I've got a funny feeling Tom Bonen could very well be in this group.
Well, they seem to have virtually all the team, but we'll watch out for that as we get down in amongst it. We'll see on the climb of the Kemmelberg, because I'm sure Bonen's going to have to make his move. Here comes the brave man trying to reach them. And he's still making progress. Look, 15 seconds. I guess they're calling him group number 2 right now.
Come at that. Former Cofidis rider, now basically the team captain for this this team that he's riding for, Bodysol Relax, and he's the kind of rider who in a year or so's time could move across into team management. He in fact said in the newspaper this morning he'd like to be the manager of a professional cycling team, very much like Paul van Heefte, who has moved across into team management as well. This descent here is a very tricky descent off the Red Mountain, the Rodeberg, and he's got a very sharp right-hand corner. He's hovering at the 15-second mark, and as these guys start to get just that little bit closer to the Mont Kemmel, they will accelerate and start to jockey for position. But I'd really like to get a good idea on the composition of that leading group, because I've got a gut feeling that I did see Tom Bonen in there.
Sharp right-hander, this one goes right back on itself, taking it wisely, very cautiously. And there's the team cars now as they accelerate out the corner. Big effort required here from Nico. If you can just get up there, you see the referees, rightly so, because of the proximity of 3 bunches, have kept all the cars away from this lead group, just the neutral service car behind. So he's got no caravan to chase down. He's going to have to do this ride himself, but he's looking very, very strong. He's got a good rhythm. He's got his eyes fixed on that group in front, and he's having a go for it.
If he gets across, this is an absolutely storming ride. You know, he's only about 10 seconds off the back end of the group. They're pulling all the cars out. That's a bit of a shame, but he can see the riders that he has to make contact with. Nico Matin, by the way, a couple of years ago finished second in this bike race when he got away with his teammate Frank van den Broeke. And to see the way he's ridden across this gap, I can tell you as an ex-bike rider, this is almost impossible to do. Chase down a group of 15 to 20 riders, especially when you've got a group on the front end like the Quick-Step Davitamon team setting up the pacemaking.
I'm going to give the smiling people down there, any of his supporters, seeing what we're seeing on television, because he has a big club here who really do follow him everywhere, usually with their klaxons and their air horns. The Matin Sporting Club. Now he's still got to cross just that little bit of extra. He's got a couple of motorbikes there though, which might help.
He's going to do it. This is pretty impressive. This is a sterling ride done by this guy. He read the race. He knew that that was the move that had to be caught up there, and he's really giving everything right now. He's only got about 40 or 50 meters left to do, and he may well just make the junction as they slow down to take the left-hand turn in the small town of Loka before they head out to the Monteberg for the final time. Got to wish him on. You've got to push him on. Just encourage him just that little bit.
This is the hard bit, isn't it? This is the bit where look,
he's given up. Oh, come
he's
on,
so
Nico.
close, you see, and he's made a huge superhuman effort now. He's gone right into the red zone. He's got to recover and go again. He's pushed himself just that little bit too hard. Take an extra kilometre to do it, and just measure your effort a little bit better. But in fact, our cameras were showing the chase group just behind. He's a little bit upset, I think, that the neutral service car pulled out of the big gap, which gave him his target. The referees might have done that on the race radio, which we wouldn't know about, but he pulled out rather early, I felt.
Well, that was a brilliant effort by this man. He was so close to making the junction, but it just goes to show how difficult it is to bridge a gap like that. Just 30 seconds. He was almost on the tail end of that group, and he's not given up yet. If they can just slow down a fraction as they go into this town of Loka, there's a left-hand turn, and if they slow down to negotiate that corner, if he doesn't give up, he's still got the chance of making the junction. But what is happening is he's acting as a carrot now to the chasing group behind. If you look back, that chasing group is still not that far off.
Far enough, I think, as he goes into. There's the next group on the road. I can't see that group getting back onto the lead group. Matan knows he's in no man's land now, and he's got to hope that they ease for a fraction of a second, and then he'll be there. But the trouble is, he'll get there just in time to take the full force of the Kemmelberg, and that won't be so pleasant.
I think that psychologically hurt him. He was so close as he comes now into the small town of Dranouter. There's the left-hand turn, but alongside the church, and they drop down now to start the Monteberg. See there, looking down this group of riders, Laszlo Bodrogi's on the front. He's doing an awful lot of work. He's sacrificing himself for the team this afternoon. There in 4th position is Servais Carnarvon. 5th place is Johan Museo. Let's just have a look. If we can just get to 6th position, I really do believe that there's another Quick-Step de Wittemon rider in there, and a man who started the race off with 3 big stars in the newspapers this morning as the #1 favourite to win.
Well, there's 6 riders here from Quick-Step. There's only 8 of them in the race. One I don't see is Bramati. The question is the other one Tom Bonen or not? But they know what they've got here right now, and they've got this breakaway absolutely by the scruff of the neck, and they're not going to give it back to the chasing peloton. They're going to time trial in team formation now as we head out towards the climbs and back to the Kemmel. Here is the unfortunate Nico Matan. The old legs, I think, have cracked there. He took himself just a little bit too much into the red zone, and it's hurt him. He should have just kept it at the level he was comfortable with and hoped that they might have slowed a little bit. The Monteberg now just over 12% at its steepest point, but Drogi still driving.
Hincapie moving himself up just into 6th or 7th position. He
Wise
knows
man.
Where he wants to be when they go into the Kemmelberg, because you have to start, I think, on conditions like this in the first 5 or 6 places. This is the back end of the group. This is Thomas Weitges, who was the aggressive rider last time round. In the middle there, I can see the red, white and blue jersey, champion of the United Kingdom, Roger Hammond, and also the leader of Cofidis, Jimmy Casper, just at the back end of the group as well. If he wants to stay in contact, I think he needs to move just a little bit further up to the front. There's Andreas Clear in Team Telecom's colours, right in the middle in the pink. And I've not yet been able to get in at the right angle to see whether or not Tom Boonen is in this group. But this is the poor lone chaser here, Nico Matan. He can't quite make it to the group in front.
If you only could reach out and drag them back, because the team car, the neutral service car, has been sent back behind them now. And he looks ever so close to that group. He's still coming, I think. Nobody here helping Quick-Step at all. That's to be expected. You've got 6 of your 8 men up there. Nobody's going to help you because they know they've got too many cards to play now. Still Bodrogi, he looks to be the sacrificial pig here. He's going to do all the work. It doesn't look far, does it? But in terms of effort, it is a giant's causeway.
It certainly is a giant's causeway for the front end of the main field. You can see just at the back end of the group there, I've got a very good indication of Magnus Backsted's form, because he's quite happy to be in this leading group. He was one of the men who was aggressive in the first part of the race. The rain is still consistently coming down here in Ghent Wevelgem, and it's going to be a little bit of a battle now for the next left-hand bend, because that's the start of the Kemmelberg for the final time. And on a day like this, the ascent is almost as precarious as the descent.
There's a lot of water on there. I think that's probably the majority of the water on our lens just now. It's coming off the back wheels of those bikes because the sun is beginning to pop through the sky again. But it is April, and it is the traditional month for the April showers, but we weren't expecting them quite as cold as they are. A lot of these showers are in fact hailstones. It is bitterly cold up there. 40 kilometers or 25 miles to go, and on to the Kemmelberg. Nico Matan has never made it. Now, George Hincap is a wise man when it comes to the Kemmel. He knows what to do, and the drive is on. And it's going to be Servais Kanavan who leads the pace now for Quick-Step, in the hope that perhaps Johan Museeuw can go out a champion all of the way to retirement. Servais Kanavan now, he's won the big one, Paris-Roubaix. He knows what the cobbles are like. Museeuw is up there, and so too is Tom Bonen. So we've been given a wrong number on screen, because that's Bonen on the wheel of Servais Kanavan.
Johan Museeuw on the right-hand side is looking very calm and collected, very strong in his third last race. Jimmy Casper, 181 at the back here for Team Cofidis. He is not riding all that well at all. He needs to ride to the front if he wants to stay in contention. But there on the left-hand side is Tom Bonen, looking very comfortable. Had a mechanical incident at the wrong time of the race, but he did manage to ride himself back in. Hincapie too, Phil, looks very good there in 5th position, nice and calm, using a small gear, making sure that he hasn't got any problems at all to stay in contact with the group.
Last year's winner, Andreas Kleijer, is just behind Hincapie. Leading this second split up is Magnus Bagstedt, so he's doing well. That's Sven Kraus, who's just hanging on for Gerald Steiner. And as they come right up the climb here now, there is a split. It's not significant yet as they head towards the summit, but if Museeuw and Bonen and Hincapie and Kleijer start motoring together, it could open up.
Servais Kanavan giving everything he can now. He realizes that they could be in a winning situation here. This is Peter Farazijn trying to get across the gap. He knows that this is an important moment here. Roger Hammond coming up through the middle, the British national champion. He too will take a few risks on the descent, and you can see just how slippery this climb is. You have to sit down to stay in contact here. René Hasselbacher on the back end of the group too for Gerald Steiner. He's looking to try and stay in contact. You know, if it all came back together, this man could create quite a surprise, because he's pretty rapid.
He's rapid in the sprint, but it's not going to be a sprint. Here is Johan Museeuw here, riding his last Ghent Wevelgem, a race he has never won, and he's in a great position yet again. George Hincapie refusing the drink. Not easy to take it right there. But as George goes down now, this is poor old Nico Matan here, still trying to get on terms. He's still a clear of the chasing group, and still the blue service car is in front of him. Now the descent, which cost Matty Heyman his place in the race last time around. First time now, though, is the line of Flanders, Johan Museeuw, followed by the winner, George Hincapie, 3 years ago.
Just a great move there by Hincapie, sitting in second position. The concentration on all of these riders' faces. Roger Hammond has made the connection there at the front end of the race. A good move by him. He's had a very solid start to the season. And here is the remnants of the main field. These riders are a long way back now. I don't think they will see the front end of the race, because there are some big names in that front group. And there's an awful lot of riders with blue and grey jerseys of Quick-Step Davitamon.
The biggest names are there now, and I think they've given Museeuw the greatest moment here. He could win this race now, and he knows it. And he's got Tom Bonen, his young protege, alongside him. Bonen came good this year with a win in the Grand Prix E3. So there's every chance now that Quick-Step can handle this race up towards the finish. Concentration there of Nico Matan.
Too far back, I think, though, because that group is going to get themselves pretty organised. They're inside of 40 kilometres to go down to the finishing line, so I would expect them to really get the hammers turned up as they realise now they've got a very good chance of winning this bike race. But somebody slipped off the front of that group, and I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't Fabien Cancellara, the Swiss rider from Fassa Bortolo. Already very successful in the early part of this season, but they're not going to let him slip off the front like that. You can be absolutely certain that Johan Museeuw will try and keep this all together now, and probably try and give the victory to his young teammate Tom Bonen, who he sees now, I think, as the new up-and-coming star of Belgian one-day cycling.
Well, knowing Johan Museeuw, I cannot believe he'd give the victory to anybody today if he has the chance to win for himself, because this would be his last win as a professional. It would be tremendously popular. One of the greatest current career Belgian cyclists, and he's never won Ghent Wevelgem. And that really will be the icing on the cake. Geert Omloop there going through Lens. He's the champion of Belgium just now. And one of the new Balearic Island pros there, taking his foot off his pedal just to make sure he goes the right way down the hill. It doesn't appear on camera just how hard this descent is, but it really is. This is Rudy Kemner coming through.
Get a chance to see just how much the bikes were actually bouncing. It's a really unbelievable descent. Even in the dry weather, it's a scary descent to go down, because the vibrations that come right the way up through the bike and the body make it very difficult to actually see where you're going to. When you throw into that the very difficult slippery condition we've had here this afternoon, it's a nightmare.
37 kilometers left to ride now. As you can see, it is still extremely wet. The sun has been shining all day at the finishing line here. But it's now, I have to say, a big black cloud is coming over. Here's the drive at the front. It looks as though Servais Kanavan has gone well through this one and continues the pacemaking. And Kretschkens and the group here is now trying to get clear. It looks as though the split has healed itself somewhat after the descent. So that's a little bit of a surprise. This is going to make it very difficult now for the riders to work out a good finish here. And I think we haven't seen the end of the breakaways yet. I think there'll be a breakup of this lead group.
It's a very large group. There's a lot of riders from Quick-Step Davitamon in it, looking over their shoulders there. They're just trying to keep it together because they realise that they've got a great chance at the win here with Tom Boonen. But I tend to agree with you, Phil. I think there will be a few more attacks before we get down to the finish line, especially with these kind of weather conditions. Because even though Tom Boonen is in the group and he's a very good sprinter, it's very risky in a day like this to just count everything on the final sprint of the day. And who knows, maybe Johan Museeuw has got something left in the back of his mind, because he would certainly like to go out of the sport with another win under his belt. He's had 103 wins throughout his career, and if he could go out with one just 3 from the end of his career, well, that certainly would be one for the books.
Well, I think these George Hincapie here indicating about just keep it cool, we're all together.
I think Hincapie is just a little bit worried about the descent, and this in fact was going back to just before they started the descent, and they were all obviously worried about how dangerous it was, and they didn't want anybody taking any foolish risks and wiping out not themselves but also 3 or 4 other bike riders, especially just 4 days to go for Paris-Roubaix.
It makes sense. Absolutely no point in taking risks. That is treacherous, and I've been down on a bike as well, and I have to say, you're frightened from top to bottom. There's no other way to get down that mountain, and to do it in these conditions, I don't think I would.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I've done it in these conditions on a few occasions, and even nowadays when we've been out during the week and had a ride over the Kemmelberg, and you get to the top, it is a very scary proposition. Tips down at 25%. And when you want to put a nice slippery surface on top, well, I'm not sure that I would ride down it nowadays.
4 riders and Quick-Step Davitamon on the front. A status quo now after the climb, the final climb of the Kemmelberg. 48 seconds to the next group on the road. 35 kilometers to go. I just have a feeling Museeuw will go alone.
May well go for it.
Try to anyway.
He will try to, absolutely certain. But you know, there's a lot of guys in this group will keep a very close eye on him. There he is in 3rd position. He's the captain of this group here, and he will try and lead the ship down on the way to Wevelgem.
Is the line-up, and number 1 there, last year's winner, Clear, has tremendous form. I think he's evidenced that force again today in this leading group. A big danger if it comes to the sprint. Boonen 3rd last year is here again. All of these are Quick-Step boys. Museeuw, I think, possible favourite. Roger Hammond, 8th last year. And Cancellara, always a man you can back for a good result. Watch out too for Frank Hoy. I've got a secret suspicion that man could spoil the party. And of course there's George Hincapie, the sprinter Jimmy Casper, the big sprinter Jan Kersipuu. Any one of these men could win this race today now.
Race is far from over. We're inside 40 kilometers to go, and this group now has got a very sensible advantage over the chasing group. There's 47 seconds separating them from the riders at the back. We're just getting a chance to have a quick glimpse here at Tristan Hoffmann. He's been a great bike rider over the last few years. Here's Laszlo Bodrogi. He's done a great job of work for the team. He was the powerhouse in pulling this breakaway off the front end of the group.
And he's got Hasselbacher just in front, who will develop a very fine sprint finish if it comes to it, and he's not going to go to the front and do any of the pacemaking. Why should he? Not when you're outnumbered by the big team of Quick-Step. And this is Bodrogi, and he's been a man for the team today. There's Roger Hammond looking across. Roger looking very cool. He's an extremely good bike handler because he's been a World Junior Cyclo-Cross champion and is the current reigning British Cyclo-Cross champion, a title which, if memory serves me right, he's won for the last 5 years. And so when you've got those bike handling skills, you're not going to worry too much about going down the Kemmelberg. Now, it is really the Quick-Step's race to lose right now because they've done it all right so far.
It was their race to lose at the weekend too,
well,
the Tour
of
Flanders,
and they lost it, of course.
They backed everything on one man, and I think that was their mistake, and I don't think they'll make that mistake again this afternoon. They backed everything on Johan Museeuw, which was a nice thing to do from a point of view of the fact that it was the last time he was going to ride the Tour of Flanders, and he won the race 3 times previously, but maybe not the most sensible decision to make out on the course, because I think Tom Bonen had very good form in the Tour of Flanders last weekend, and maybe now they will try a two-pronged tactic here. They've got Bonen in the group who can try and win the sprint if it all comes down to a sprint finish at the end, but they've also got the ability to try and launch a man like Johan Museeuw off the front. There aren't too many places to attack here, but you never know on the rolling hills down towards the finish. There'll be a lot of sore legs in this race this afternoon because of the cold, wet conditions.
Yes, and a lot of effort now being given by these riders, only 4 days away from Paris-Roubaix. But just look at that. I don't think Quick-Step lost any of the riders. They still got 6 men down there in this group up ahead, so they're using them all to good effect. And it's almost as if they're leading out for the sprint finish the way they're riding this race, but of course they're not. And remember that the race is too. That looks like Jimmy Casper, who was dropped on the climb here. And it's Nico Martin is now caught up with Jimmy. Nico hasn't given up yet, and there's just a chance because we go into narrow roads before we get down to the main road run-in. And that's where I think the attacks will come from the front group, and they'll try to hold them off on the run into Wevelgem itself. There's still just a chance these two could bridge the gap. If that's their time gap, 38 seconds, though, it's a bit much, maybe.
It's a long way on roads like this, and especially with these weather conditions. Let's not forget that right now the man on the front there, Nico Martin, has been chasing for around about 15 kilometers, and he's never quite managed to make the gap. He needed to do it on that little climb between the Black Mountain and the Red Mountain. If he could have done it then, he would have had a chance to recuperate somewhat. But right now, all he can hope is that there's a general slowing down in that leading group, and I don't think that's going to happen because there are 6 riders in that group from Quick-Step d'Avitement, and they've got the race under control, and they realize all they've got to do is make sure that nobody comes back from behind.
Well, as you can see, the clouds ahead are again becoming very dark, and the riders are likely to get another storm before they reach the finish. They're actually trying to dry the road out on the finishing straight here, in order they can put down the usual advertising, but not having a great deal of success right now. But we haven't had rain, and we've had a circuit race here while we've been commentating to you, an amateur race. And I just noticed a USA rider finished very high up, but he's an amateur rider. As we watch now that cloud, oh indeed, there's a change here. Now this could be very serious.
This is Bonen.
Not
Tom
again.
Bonen.
This
He's
is Bonen standing near camera, and another back wheel puncture by the look. He's not going to. If he wins this, then he's going to have a lot to tell his people back home, because he's had 2 flat tyres now. Looks like his teammates are all committed to him today. He's the only man who's been given a 5-star rating to win the race today in the local papers.
That was his teammate coming across there, and that is quite remarkable because that was Nick Nuyens who passed the wheel across. Now, I would expect Quick-Step d'Avitement would back off just a little bit at the front end of the group, and this might be good for Nico Martin because they will slow down the work being done in that leading breakaway. This is a tough day for Tom Bonen because not only was he involved with a mechanical incident at the wrong time just before we came to the Kemmelberg the first time, but now in the latter part of the race at just 30 kilometers to go, he's also had another flat tire. But you see, you look at that, they've cut it down. Nobody else wants to work in this group because the team that was doing all of the pacemaking on the left-hand side there was Quick-Step d'Avitement. Tom Bonen is going to come back.
Now this is the advantage of having a strong team. You see, nobody wants to help the Quick-Step team, and now they're still not going to take up the pacemaking. And so this is going to be a nice rapid return for Tom Bonen, and the effect of having teams up front to slow them down. As he comes up rather smoothly, a teammate comes off the back to help him just close psychologically those last couple of meters. And it looks as though no panic. That looks like it is, in fact, Servais Knapp. No, it is Museeuw himself who has come back to help Tom Bonen. But maybe what you said is right, Paul. Maybe he is trying to get Bonen to win.
He knows how much form this young man has got. But did you see the little sign from his hand there? Just putting his hand up, calm down, it's okay, we've got it under control. No panic. And look at that, the snow now is starting to come down here in Ghent Wevelgem. Servais Knapp. Quick chat with one of his teammates on the left-hand side there. They're going to get themselves organised once again. But this might be the moment when we look back and see Nico Martin and Jimmy Casper coming back.
Well, they've also picked up, of course, they picked up the rider that gave the wheel out, Nuyens. So Nuyens also coming back now. So the extra firepower might be the sort of present from heaven that Nico Martin was hoping for.
Better close the gap down pretty quickly here. He'll get some help there from Nuyens because Nuyens, the Quick-Step d'Avitement rider, passed his wheel over to his team leader. They will require him on the run in towards the finish, and if this man here in the lime green jersey gets across, I'm going to take my hat off to him, because he gave up as he came up to the first approach to the Kemmelberg, but then he got himself back into some kind of a rhythm, and I think in this time he's actually going to make it, and that is a fair ride.
Well, you need a little bit of a present from heaven, I think, when you're chasing at the limit of your ability, and it looks as though there's just a chance now. At 30 kilometers to go, Nico Martin is going to hook up with the leaders. Noyens will need all the help he can get too, but I think this is it. And Jimmy Casper, who's not the greatest of climbers, he lost contact with the leaders on the cobbles of the Kemmelberg. Took no chance on the way down. It looks like he too might get back, and if he gets back, then watch out for him in the sprint finish, because sprinters, once they see those finishing banners, suddenly find a fresh pair of legs.
Jimmy Casper's a very good sprinter. He's not had any wins this season, but he had 3 wins last year. He's a young rider who in the past has threatened to be the new big sprinter of France, and when he burst onto the scene, he in fact beat Eric Zabel a couple of times on stages of the Tour of Germany. That was a couple of years ago, but since then he's had a hard time, because he's a slightly heavily built rider, but a very brave and courageous rider. If you cast your mind back to the Tour de France, he was involved in a very serious crash and rode 2 or 3 days with a neck brace on to get himself into the race, and I think he's the kind of rider who won't give up, and if he can just catch up here as the Body Shell team car comes up here, I don't think the race referees will be too happy about that, as they're stopping the team cars behind. Just as we pull back a little bit, we get a chance to see what the time gap is, and it's not really very much, but Nico Martin has had a seriously hard ride to catch up with the front end of the race.
There's the long thin line as the riders get back on with it now, coming off that bend again. Here come the 3 Musketeers. Casper hanging on, but knows there could be a big chance if he can get back into this race for the Cofidis boys. 18 months ago he was 6th in the World Road Race Championship, the year of the sprinters in Belgium, and now he's coming back up to the tail. He's having a real hard job hanging on to the other 2 riders here, but I think he's going to do it.
Just about going to make it. You can see there the rider that passed his wheel across to Tom Boonen there, Nick Noyens. He's just giving a bit of a hand there to Nico Martin. They're catching past the last couple of cars. They've made it. They've made the contact. For Nico Martin, this was one of the longest chases I think I've seen in a big race like this over the last couple of years. But he's made the contact with the front group. He's read the race correctly. But my, oh my, wasn't it hard to do?
I don't think he can believe his luck there. And there's a hand gone up here now for another flat wheel.
It's one of the CSC riders. I think it was Tristan Hoffman having a problem there, but that might just be calling his team car forward for a drink.
Well, there's a grateful, I think you're right, actually. That's a bottle that's come out of the car there. 28 kilometres to go. Another 8 kilometres, no more drinks. Time to take on the fluid for the rest of the ride in. The boys in blue now, and they've got Noyens back in the group as well, who generously gave his wheel to Tom Boonen. And this is Bodrogi driving at the front. The man that also gave his wheel to Boonen last time, Kevin Hulsmans, he never came back, so he's gone. So the 2 missing riders are David Bernardi and Kevin Hulsmans from the team. Watch out for Hammond. He packs a good sprint finish, and he was 8th in the race last year. But I've got a feeling that the way Quick-Step are riding today, they're going to be really very, very difficult to outmaneuver.
You look at the position here of Noyens. He's a real hard time to pull himself back into this race. He's calling up the team car quite quickly. Excuse me, can I get another drink on board here, because I really am not in the best of condition, having chased to get back after handing my wheel across to the team leader. He's done his job of work. As we can see, the team car here of Nico Martin coming forward as well to look after Nico Martin. Great ride by him. Unbelievable. In fact, just coming in front of us right now, there's 1 or 2 riders from the main peloton already finishing. They obviously didn't do 2 laps of the Kemmelberg, Phil.
1 or 2 convert that to 20 or 30, I think, Paul, as they just went past here after they completed the first lap and decided enough was enough. I noticed there that rider Heisdahl, one of the new boys on the US Pro team, having called it quits out there today, and at least they've had a dry ride in. Still not raining at the finishing line, and this the select group now of around about 27 riders heading towards the finish, and Bodrogi of Hungary, the real driver at the front, and the sacrificial lamb, as I said earlier, for the riders from Quick-Step. 27 kilometres to go. Nico Martin is safely in the pack. Jimmy Casper's taking his deep breaths, and we'll wait now for the finish. And now I'm not sure whether that was Andreas Clear who was actually going to the back there.
Probably just going back for drinks for the last time in this race. A bit of a laugh and a joke going on here from the the Bodysol team. I don't think they can actually believe that Nico Martin rode across the gap. A great performance by that man, and one of the stories we probably never would have seen if it hadn't been for television, giving us the excitement of the chase back. And good race reading by Nico Martin there, and I'm really very surprised that he was actually able to do that, because that was a tall order, and that was around about a 25-kilometer chase. And I think the gods of cycling looked down upon him this afternoon, because he was only really able to catch back because of that flat tyre going to Tom Boonen.
27 men in this leading group, strengthened by the arrival of those three. And still nobody willing to help Quick-Step, and that's absolutely normal at this stage of an international bike race at this level. Far too many riders, all with race favourites on, so they're going to let them do all of the work. But it won't be much longer before I don't think there'll be some counter-attacks from the centre of this peloton. Rennie Hasselbacher at the back here, he's the big sprinter. If he gets half a chance, the last year's winner is just hooked up on the end, Andreas Clear. And now it looks like Newens wants his team car again.
Very narrow roads here. There's the riders make their way across around the back streets of Ypres, and then they'll join the main road from Ypres down into Wevelgem. And it's on that big, large main road that we might see one or two attacks start to come. It's an ideal situation where the road undulates as it heads in towards the small border towns of Maiden and then Wevelgem. And the fact that Team Quick-Step Davitamon are doing most of the pacemaking on the front end of the main field just goes to indicate that these other guys are having a fairly easy ride. So several of them will try and get themselves into a situation where they can attack, because this is a situation where we've got many riders now will be nurturing hopes of a win in what is a very important one-day classic.
Well, the Germans are on a high, having won the Tour de Flanders with the teammate of Clear, Stefan Wesseman, who's being rested today for Paris-Roubaix. Pressure on Clear, they've given him his chance to repeat his victory on the team, and he's put himself into the winning breakaway, and there's no doubt that's what it is right now. The last Belgian to win this race, we have to go back to the year 2000, Geert van Bont, which is surprising, because they've dominated this race over the years. It first began in 1934, 70 years ago. The winner then, by the way, was a chap called Gust van Belle, and it was a 1-2-3, of course, for Belgium, because it was quite a way in before they started getting foreign riders taking part.
Just remembering last year the sprint for the line, as Andreas Clear was the first man over the line. Tom Boonen crossed the line in third place, and then just immediately having crossed the line, he whacked into a line of photographers and went down pretty hard onto the ground. I hope that situation doesn't arrive today. And it was funny, you were just mentioning the guy out on the finishing line trying to dry the road off. Well, that was a wasted effort because it's raining again.
Just started to come down at the finishing line now, ahead of the rise. You can see how dark it is. Well, it's now over us, I'm afraid, but we're quite dry, as Quick-Step now still try to keep control of this race just by keeping the pace, a high tempo at 25 to go. To attack them now on these roads would be pretty nigh impossible, because you'd have to come from the middle of the peloton, and then you've got to go straight past 6 riders from Quick-Step, and by that time they'll be on you. So it's going to be a bunch, possibly until we get to the main road right now.
It's very difficult to move to the front on these very narrow roads, especially when you've got a team like Quick-Step Davitamon in complete control at the front end of the peloton. They're quite happy with the situation. They feel confident that their man Tom Boonen can win this race, although I wouldn't really want to leave it down to the sprint. It's so risky, especially when you know the form of a man like George Hincapie. Hincapie's there in about 7th or 8th position. He's had a fairly easy ride this afternoon. He said he didn't want to try too hard just 3 or 4 days before Paris-Roubaix, but if the opportunity to win the stage, win the race comes to him, he will certainly take it. And of course the fact that Jan Kursipuu, who we've not talked an awful lot about, is in this group, and it looks as if he might be having a little bit of a problem here at the back end.
Yeah, this is him, and he looks as though the pace is beginning to get too much for him here. I thought he'd done very well to get over the Kemmelberg twice with the leaders, but there is a very definite gap forming now. I'm a bit surprised, but Kursipuu, more than 100 wins. Is this what happened? And it looks like it might be. Drops down the line here. More than 100 wins as a pro, but he needs just that one big one to make him something special.
He's looking back as if he's got some kind of an incident at the back end of the group here. He's calling forward a team car.
Difficult place to get a team car through on these narrow roads.
It certainly is. That's another big problem in these kind of races in Belgium. You really have to make sure that you hold your position in the team car convoy.
Yeah, I wanted to change.
It was a flat tyre there, and that took an awful long time for him to get that spare wheel brought in, and
well,
I
that's
think
bad luck.
it's bad luck for him, but it's good luck for Quick-Step Davitamon. A little problem there with a bit of dirt in the cleat, but he's up on the road, and he doesn't have any teammates to drop back and look after him, as the man from Quick-Step Davitamon, Tom Boonen, did just a few moments ago. This is going to be a long, hard chase for Jan Kirsipuu.
Yes, and that's a big bonus for the Quick-Step boys. A big sprinter like Jan Kirsipuu being called upon now to use a lot of valuable twitch fibre to get back into the group itself. Here comes the team car now to try and turn the other way and see if they can just coax him to get forward a little bit. But it won't be easy, as the riders racing towards the main road as we head down towards the finish in Wevelgem. Hollebeke is where the leaders are, 27 of them, or 26 plus 1 right now. He should get back, but what energy will he use on the way?
An awful lot to try and make sure he pulls himself back up into this leading group. The roads are starting to dry, about 23 kilometers to go, and fortunately it should make it just that little bit safer for the riders as they start to sprint down the finishing straight here in Wevelgem. A very famous finishing straight that most of these riders will know, but none more so than the Belgian riders, who will be looking to try and get themselves a victory here on this really long straight finish line. It's a great finish line here as we look at a little incident at the side of the road there. There was a car which almost certainly should not have been there. They've now gone through the small town of Hollebeke. The next town they will hit will be Zwanvoorde, and then slowly but surely they'll get that little bit closer to the finish.
Man that started the move there, Seb Rosseler, he was the one that went away, and the others came to him on the Kemmelberg. Just gone back here. He believes the rain's gone for the day now. He was handing in his racing cape there. I'm not so sure he's right, but let's hope so, as we now go into the last 22 kilometers. And having made the decisive move, these riders are now going to have to start thinking how they are going to outwit the Quick-Step Davitamon team.
Well, a lot of these riders have been passengers over the last few kilometers, and they'll be looking for a moment when they can actually get themselves into an attacking situation. And that's one thing I'm sure Nico Martin will try and do as they get a bit close to the finish. Will you haze in these bike riders, how they can handle their machines going around a corner? Cars, bikes, motorbikes, all of these things getting involved in the race. But nobody ever really seems to panic. It's all part and parcel of the excitement of the sport of professional cycling. Everybody knows how to handle themselves and does their job to perfection.
Yes, but these roads are particularly dangerous here, that those riders having to go the long way around the corner. They get the advantage now of the inner. And it was Cofidis there who was changing, possibly Jimmy Casper, also giving in his racing cape. Because once the sun gets back through again, temperatures seem to shoot up. And here comes Jan Kirsipuu, still in the convoy. Still having to make quite a meal of it, because he was quite a way back when he got his wheel change. And as you can see, difficult to pick your way through here. The cars, if they see him coming, will make as much room as they can. I mean, there's no question of a rival team car trying to block a rival rider, because they know one day it could be their turn. So they'll always let the rider through, and they'll always warn the car in front where the rider is. And I'm not sure the same for our television cameraman, but I think we're just about through.
Well, he's slowly but surely picking his way through the cars. He's got around about 15 or 20 seconds gap to make up, but I think the experience of Jan Kirsipuu will show. And just around the corner, ooh, I was going to say, it's a tricky life being a professional bike rider. You have to take all kinds of risks, especially when you're trying to pick your way through the convoy. I think the team manager, Mark Sargent, there for Lotto Domo, was not quite sure whether or not he was going to pull up quite that quickly.
We'll have a look at that again, I think. This is it. Mark was on the right, and that was the way that Jan was coming through. Got a bit of a dirty look off Jan Kirsipuu there, as he now gets the inside.
Good sprinter though, Kirsipuu. You see the reflexes. He knew exactly which way to go. He knew there was no hole at all to get himself up on the inside, and he just flicked across to the left-hand side of the road. Pretty impressive to still have that agility after almost 90 kilometers of racing. 3 or 4 cars left to go. He's on the back end of Team Telecom's car here, the team of last year's winner, Andreas Clear. But this will have taken a lot out of the legs of Jan Kirsipuu, especially when we come down to the sprint towards the end.
Closing the gap nicely though, as he comes up, and man has won more than 110 races from memory. Jan Kirsipuu with this time around.
Quite start to the season for Jan Kirsipuu this year, with just 4 wins, and the first time we saw him was well down in the month of January in the Tour Down Under, when he was already showing that he had fine form. In fact, he tried to get himself a lone victory on that occasion. That's quite a surprise for a sprinter. I think here he's riding very sensibly. He's not panicking at all. He's a very experienced professional bike rider. Once you get to this point in the team cars, you know you can just take your time to pick your way up through the group and get yourself back onto the line.
Well, that's a welcome return for Kirsipuu. Just looking at his record, 117 victories he's got. And that's an awful lot, but he still lacks that one victory that would make him stand out as a great bike rider. And that's a classic. And in Belgium, Ghent Wevelgem is all of that.
It's also the classic for the sprinters. It's been run in the past mainly by sprinters. And Jan Kirsipuu over the years has certainly been one of those. With 20 wins to his credit a couple of years ago in 2001, he's always been a consistent winner, always provided victories for his team. And I wonder what's going through the back of his mind. A lot of riders now, Phil, will be thinking about where can they attack Quick-Step Davitamon, the very well-drilled squad from Belgium, who in the back of their mind are just thinking about one thing: nursing Tom Boonen to the finish line and keeping their fingers crossed that he doesn't have another flat tyre at 10 kilometres to go.
Yes, that would hurt. Well, let's Breakaway knows now that at least that this is the race for Ghent Wevelgem for the year 2004. There's nobody going to catch them up, so the tactics will start soon. There are some very good sprinters for a change in the leading group. Hasselback is one of them, Kirsipuu, Casper. They are riders who can turn a very nifty sprint, but so too, we have to say, can Tom Boonen and Andreas Clear, who won in a sprint, albeit a three-man sprint last time. And everybody now beginning to get rid of the excess baggage. Time to think about what's lying ahead. And it could be another little bit of a rainstorm before they get to the finish, but at the moment, it's nice and dry, and they're beginning to warm to the occasion. Peter Faderzijn here sat at the back, while the rider there from Fassa Bortolo is getting rid of all his clothing.
Let's not discount the chances either of George Hincapie, who was very comfortably in this group. He's not done very much work at all this afternoon, but he has been in the right place at the right time throughout the event, just making sure that he catches on to the front end of all these very important splits. And every time it looks like being a dangerous tactical moment, moves himself up into the first 5 or 10 places. He's not used a lot of energy. He's using this race as final preparation for Paris-Roubaix, and I'm sure one day or another George Hincapie is going to win one of the big monuments of one-day cycling, Paris-Roubaix or the Tour of Flanders. But if on the way he can take a second Ghent Wevelgem, I think he'll go for it.
So do I. And just recently the winner of the 3 days of the Panna, which was his first big win since he won the Ghent Wevelgem. He has good form. He's riding with even a better confidence. 1 year ago he was sick at this time of the year. Now he's back on top form. This is Fletcher, number 85. Spanish rider. One of the few Spanish riders who can ride a very good single-day race, it seems, away from home shores, because they're not really big excellers, the Spanish, especially in Ghent Wevelgem. They've never won this race in the past. And the chief commissaire there, all smiles. Spain have never had a good place in this event. Never mind won it, Paul.
Well, they very rarely have come up to the northern climbs and shone well, except in races like Liège-Bastogne-Liège and the Flèche Wallonne, where they've been pretty dominant in the last few years. And once again, the rain is starting to come down and batter these bike riders. It's been a very difficult day for everyone this afternoon, with rain coming down and then a respite for 5 or 10 minutes. Then it comes back once again. But the one thing that's been very consistent is the wind has been buffeting the riders since they left Ostend and rode down to De Panne and then headed inland to the Heuvelland. Look at George Hincapie there in about 7th or 8th position in the dark blue jersey, just sitting there nice and comfortable. He doesn't have any teammates at all. He'll be keeping a very close eye on his tyre pressures to make sure he doesn't have any incident, because if he has a flat tyre, nobody's going to help Big George get back into this group.
Well, George is sitting at the tail of the boys in blue and just keeping an eye on things right now. 31 kilometers an hour, so they're not exactly rushing into this wind, are they, at 19 miles an hour? But it is not a bad time for the race today. They picked up a lot of tailwind up by the coast, and clearly a lot of riders now have already arrived back at the finishing line here. There's still no rain on the finishing line, and they're only 17 kilometers away from us, but they might just catch the tail of this cloud. I think it should be okay. Nothing like they've experienced in the middle of the Kemmelberg anyway. And the crowd now, quite a big crowd. Funny enough, the finishing line in Wevelgem, it's not a great finish for the public. It's a narrow sidewalk to finishing straight. A great sprint for the sprinters, there's no doubt about that, but very difficult for the public to get a good advantage point. And at the start this morning, there was a massive crowd to see the riders on the way.
192 kilometers covered now, and getting closer and closer to the finish. And I feel certain somebody in that group has got to have a try in the next 6 or 7 kilometers to try and get off the front end of this group, because if they leave it down to the sprinters, well, there's only 3 or 4 riders in this group who've got a serious chance of taking out the win, and one of those is obviously Tom Boonen, who really has been going on through all kinds of unfortunate luck this afternoon. 2 flat tyres, and if he does win, he'll have some pretty serious stories to tell at the end of the afternoon. Jimmy Casper could be the surprise here. He's looking quite comfortable. He's got a teammate in the group, Peter Ferrazijn, who can look after him. They're now onto the big main road. This is the main road from Ypres to Menen. Once they get into Menen, they'll make a little circuitous route around the town before finally lining up for the finishing straight into Wevelgem, which is a long finishing straight of around about 3 or 4 kilometers. No corners at all to worry about.
Looks as though Servais Knaven there's getting a little bit of a cold left hand, trying to shake some life back into it. There's George with his sunglasses on. Not the perfect day for sunglasses, but nonetheless. And Knaven now having a word there with Museu, and Boonen just behind, easing out his neck. All getting ready, all wondering why nobody's yet attacked them, but I still think that there will be attacks. That it would be folly to carry this race all the way to the finish like it is, because the winner certainly will come from Quick Step.
Well, Tom Boonen is just 23 years of age, and it seems like we've been talking about him forever. And he moved across to this team last year, wanted to ride alongside Johan Museu, felt that that was the team where he could learn his trade a lot better than he could on US Postal Service when he turned professional. In fact, finished in 3rd place in Paris-Roubaix when he did the majority of that day working for George Hincapie. Hincapie finishing 4th. But Boonen, I think, is a serious star of the future and has done well to ride alongside Johan Museu in the last couple of years of his career. 56 kilometers an hour as they go into the corner here. The average speeds here are brought to us by the motorbike, so they're somewhat falsified a little bit, but at least it's an indication of the kind of speed that these riders approach when they're coming into the outskirts of the finishing towns. A long line as, again, Quick Step turn up the pace on the front end of the main field, and somebody surely in that group must be thinking about the possibility of breaking the stranglehold of the blue and grey jerseys on the front end of the group.
I think Cappy's riding a model race just now. He's doing what he told us he would do, and that's take it easy, use energy only if he had to. He wants a lot of excess energy for Paris-Roubaix. It's a huge ambition for George to become the first American to win that event. He holds the best finish with Greg LeMond equal at the moment. We know that George would have probably have won this race had he ridden for what is now the Quick Step team in the years gone by, because he would have a much more dedicated team around him, because he's certainly been one of the strongest men in Paris-Roubaix. But this Sunday could be for George, you know, and he knows it, and he's not going to waste too much energy. But now he's on the way home in Wevelgem, on the way home as a previous winner in the year 2001, and once he gets to see that finishing straight, he's going to be in amongst the big bid for the win again.
It's always interesting when you go back to a race that you've won previously, because you have just that little bit more morale than everybody else as well, because you've been there, you've done it, and you do feel confident. And the memories of that victory come back into your mind, especially as you get that bit closer to the finishing line. And George will be trying to reminisce on how he got that win a couple of years ago. This is Jimmy Casper, and he's just having a quick word there with Alan Deloy. He's the team manager who's looking after Team Cofidis here this afternoon. Alan Deloy actually beat me in the Amateur Paris-Roubaix in the sprint for 2nd place, and that was an awful long time ago. He finished 2nd and I was 3rd.
That was a good result, to say the least.
Not too bad, but I don't think it impressed Barry Hoban, the British rider who finished 3rd in the professional event. And Barry always thought that was pretty funny when I would pull out the amateur result at the end of the day. Roger Hammond, look at the face on him there. He's just breathing a little bit heavily, trying to warm his body up. British national champion there, red, white and blue jersey. And it's good to see that he's a national champion on the road, because on a number of occasions he's been national cyclocross champion. And at the very young age of 19 was world junior champion as well, I think, and that was in Leeds.
He's the only British cyclist, in fact, who has won the British cyclocross and the British road title in the same year. And he'll try and defend his British Championship in June this year, the same course on which he won the title last year in South Wales. And he's got good form. He's having the best start to the season ever. Little word of advice: his new team this year, Mr. Bookmaker, although it's basically the same team, Palmans Kolstrop, just a little extra money in the pot for the bike riders. Rogers won the riders they insisted on keeping. He is the protected rider on the squad during these early classics, and I think with good reason. There's a real chance now of a top 4 finish for Roger today, I would say.
He'll be looking for the win. He's going to have to be very careful which wheel he decides to pick on the run down towards the finishing line. I think if I was going to pick a wheel, if it does start to get itself lined up, I would certainly try and pick the wheel of Tom Boonen. There he is, just creeping into the frame a little bit. He's had a bit of bad luck, but he certainly is a very rapid finisher. He won a stage this year of the Tour of Qatar, but I think probably his biggest win was just before the start of the one-day classic seasons, the Grand Prix E3. And that for a Belgium is a very important victory as we look down here at the Kopfang the Wegstrijd. Another chance to see the composition of the group. Last year's winner, Andreas Clear, completely isolated, no teammates at all to look after him. But he's a canny enough rider to use the other wheels to follow in the sprint when it comes down towards the line. And the big favourite there, number 33, Tom Boonen, must be really starting to get a little bit of chicken skin going down the back of his thighs, because this would certainly be the biggest win of his career if he could get this one.
It most certainly would. George Hincapie there, 163. Maggie Bagstedt, he's a very good sprinter. We mustn't forget him. He's the only Swedish cyclist to have won a stage of the Tour de France. And there's 25 riders in this leading group at the moment, with the man who started it, Sebastian Russeler, the last number on your screen there. 11 kilometers to go, and no one has gone to the front of this group since we started the ascent of the Kemmelberg.
You know, just looking down at that long list of names there, Phil, there were an awful lot of very good sprinters. I think it's a risky situation for Quick-Step Davitamon here to bet all of their money onto one man, and the man who they're betting it all on here is Tom Boonen, because with riders like Bagstedt and Frankie Hoy and George Hincapie, they certainly haven't got this win completely under their belt. I would think they may well just try and launch somebody off the front end of the peloton as they get closer to the finish, but they seem completely dedicated to giving Boonen the win. He did, after all, as you say, have a 5-star recommendation in the newspapers this morning as the #1 favourite for Belgium, but the favourite doesn't always come up with the win.
Not at all, but I must say he's ridden like a champion today. 2 flat tyres, the benefit of having teammates who were very close when the incidents happened, gave him wheels. I thought for a moment, though, we were getting a bit twitchy on the left of our picture. I thought we might have had an attack, but no. Those are the cycle tracks, by the way, in Belgium, and you must ride on them by law unless you're on closed roads for the main cycle races. Casper at the back. He won't be at the back when he comes down to the finish if he can find the sprint today. That will go down as his greatest victory, though, that's for sure. 10 kilometers to go, that's just 6 miles.
These guys have got power in their legs and their organisation. That extra power comes from the fact that they've got complete confidence that Tom Boonen in number 6 position there has got everything required to win this race for them. These guys are not even thinking about themselves. They're not holding anything at all back. And as they get to 10 kilometers to go now, they're slowly but surely starting to turn up the screw, making sure that they can nullify any attacks that might come in the final 10 kilometers. And they're picking up the pace to around about 45 kilometers now. You can just almost feel them gliding along these roads here as they approach 9 kilometers to go. And in a few moments' time, 9 kilometers corresponds to around about 13 minutes of racing. So we'll know whether or not Tom Boonen is going to run out the overall winner. 3rd place last year, but the man who beat him on that occasion was Andreas Clear. And Clear is in this group and doesn't seem to be too worried at all about the fact that he doesn't have any teammates at all to help him out.
But the cloud is coming in here. It's getting very black at the finishing line, and it could be bad timing for the rain, which could also have a final say in the race today. Just over 8 kilometers to go. 25 riders locked together, all of the work being done by the 6 men from Quick-Step, and they're carrying some very fast sprinters towards the line. They have one good sprinter as well, and that's Tom Boonen. I don't think Johan Museeuw can live really with the sprinters in this front group today, and I would have thought that he might try to distract them by launching an attack, maybe 2 kilometers out.
Well, in the old days, when he first turned professional, Johan Museeuw was a bunch sprinter. He won a couple of big bunch sprints at the Tour de France, one at the beautiful site of the Mont Saint-Michel, and the other one he won was on the Champs-Élysées right at the very end. I think, though, he's not quite got that explosive ability to win the sprints anymore, but certainly he will try and take the responsibility of steering the team to a win in one way or another, and maybe the idea would be to try and launch off the front. And I'm really surprised, Phil, that at 8 kilometers to go, nobody yet has tried to jump away from the front end of this bunch and surprise the men from Quick Step.
It's just too high the speed. I think they're coming into, the wind is not huge out there at the moment, but they're coming in with this headwind, and I think that's probably also deterring the thoughts from riders of going for home. But Drogi's been an absolute star today, on the front as often as he can, keeping the pace high. Second in command is Servaes Knaven. He goes through when he has to. I think he possibly, you see, Paul, he could win this race, Knaven.
He's a very clever bike rider. Let's not forget how he won Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago. All the pressure was on Johan Museo in the group behind, and he jumped away, basically taunting everybody else to chase him down, but they tried to, but couldn't. It's the kind of man that in the back of his mind just might have that ability to jump out of the bunch with 2 or 3 kilometers to go, take the pressure off the team, because it's so risky in a situation like this to leave all of your eggs in the one basket.
Well, the cloud which is coming towards us here on the finishing line is already over the race by the look of it, and has started raining quite heavily. The riders bringing the rain towards us. It's still dry at the finishing line, but looking desperately black now, and a sprint is going to be quite dangerous in slippery conditions like this. It's a main group of 27 riders at 7 kilometers to go. Quick Step, by keeping the pace as high as possible, have deterred everybody from trying to attack them. And remember, they're carrying the man they want to win, which I suspect is Johan Museo, and the man who probably should win, and that's Tom Boonen.
You can see now riders beginning to get nervous as they get closer to the finish. They're all moving up the outside to try and get themselves into 6th, 7th, 8th position, because they know that very shortly that Quick Step will start to turn up the screws at the front end of the peloton. You see everybody jumping over those railway lines there. Very dangerous at this time of the year in Belgium. Very slippery, those railway lines. They cause a lot of crashes up by the coast on the ride down from Ostend to Panna. As at the back of the group here, Tristan Hoffmann, Phil. He's the kind of bike rider who is a very clever bike rider. He's not won an awful lot of races over the last couple of years, but he certainly has the ability to hit them hard just at the right time. And I've got a gut feeling in the back of my mind somebody shortly has to go out on the attack just to try and surprise Quick Step.
It'll happen in the last few kilometers. Maybe when they see the 5 kilometers to go banner, they will try to start the softeners and get Quick Step out of sync at the front of this bunch. Because CST have 2 men here, and Frank Hoy had a brilliant end to his Tour of Flanders, and he is a very fast sprinter given the right conditions. Both CSC riders near the back of the group here, but close together. Teammates like to ride close together. They like to know how each other feels and what they want to do as they approach the line. They'll have had a chat.
They'd like to have a bit of communication just to see what the form is in the legs of the other man in the group with them, and they can feed on that kind of information. Hoffmann just sitting at the back there, 4 from the rear. Jimmy Casper is a long way back. If he's thinking about trying to get himself a win here this afternoon, he needs to start thinking about moving up. He needs to look for his teammate Peter Farazijn to ride him in the first 5 or 6 positions as we slowly but surely get down towards the finishing line. 5 kilometers now left to go.
And still nobody allowed to come to the front. It's a private party of Quick Step de Wietemont, bringing their former national champions and their former world champion in Johan Museo towards the finishing line. No Belgian winner since the year 2000. Boonen beaten into 3rd place and fell as soon as he crossed the line a year ago. He ploughed into the photographers. Desperate to finish he was, and pipped by Henk Vogels and in the end Andreas Klier, who is also in this group, and we've hardly mentioned his name. And he knows the finish, and he can finish fast.
He's all on his own, though. He doesn't have anybody to look after him. He'll be looking for the wheel of Tom Boonen as we get closer to the finish, as will probably George Hincapie, who, let's not forget, himself in his early days as a professional bike rider was an exceptionally fast sprinter. He says he's been training in a different way over the last few years, really thinking more about getting himself over the big mountain passes of the Alps and the Pyrenees in the month of July for Lance Armstrong. But when you've got a chance to get a victory like this, all of a sudden you can find the twitch fibers that you had in the early part of your career. And I have a feeling George will be summoned to use those again this afternoon as he's moved up there. He's right on the wheel there of Tom Boonen, who is riding in position number 6 at the end of this very long line of Quick Step de Wietemont.
Well, you can just see the faces on these boys now as they're going to hold this field together as long as they possibly can, just on 26 miles an hour the pace. Riders now behind the boys in blue, repositioning, as you can see. Tried to break in a little bit. Magnus Bagstedt all of a sudden moving towards the front. Jan Kersipuu sitting on his back wheel. The sprinters now lining up behind the blue train at 3.5 kilometers to go.
Roger Hammond moving up there as well into the top 10 as they now realise this is a big chance to get the victory away from Quick-Step Davitamon. The team of Tom Boonen have done an absolutely fabulous ride. Now you can see finally Peter Verheyen moving up the outside, trying to get Jimmy Casper up there. Everyone's getting nervous. Everyone is looking for the position to get themselves to the front end of the race, but they don't want to be in first position just yet.
And the man I've not mentioned the whole race, number 11 there, Robert Forster. I saw him win a race in Cape Town in South Africa a couple of years ago. He is a very solid professional rider looking for one big win to make him a star. Today could be his. He can sprint very, very quickly indeed. And the rider we haven't noticed, we've always talked about his teammate René Hasselbacher, but both of those riders now are together on the Gerolsteiner squad. Inside 3 kilometers to go to the finish.
Everybody getting very nervous. This is Laszlo Bodrogi at the back. His job done for the day. Fabulous job by him and the rest of the team. All that's left to do is for Tom Boonen to finish it off. The pressure is on his shoulders. Up there into 6th position on the right-hand side, you can see the men are all trying to battle for the wheel there of Tom Boonen, who's still number 5. The last man I think who will lead him out is the man just in front of him, Johan Museo. Last time in the Tour in the Ghent-Wevelgem race for Johan Museo. But it's an awful lot of pressure to put on the young shoulders of Boonen, just 23 years of age.
Well, Baxter is well placed here now, sitting just off the blue train as a little rush comes up now, as again Verheyen brings up Jimmy Casper right into the hot seat now. That's Verheyen moving up as he brings Casper, number 3, in line there. Then there's a move on the left of our picture too. That'll be Hasselbacher for Gerolsteiner. Now they're all beginning to mob now. They've let the boys in blue do the work for kilometre after kilometre. There goes the first attack down the other side of the road. But the boys from Quick-Step are quickly onto the attack here to try and shut down that early attack for the line. That had to happen. 2 kilometres to go now. Small little bit of daylight between the first 4 riders. Quickly closed there by Foster. I think it was Hasselbacher who launched that attack, but he's back in the group anyway. Now Tom Boonen is still in a good position here, but it's not going to be easy to get him to the finish because all of a sudden the rest of the riders from Quick-Step Davitamon have been swept away here. They might regret allowing this field to stay together all the way to the line, packing so many good sprinters, including George Hincapie and Roger Hammond, Jimmy Casper, Hasselbacher. Frankie Hoy can sprint well when it really counts, and it certainly counts now. Up on the outside there, again, the Gerolsteiner boys are moving forwards. They really fancy the chances. Clear just now appears to be out of it. He's riding on the wheel of Roger Hammond. Hammond, in turn, isn't too far away from Hincapie. So the whole field are still waiting for a late rush at the line. Moving up smoothly on the left is Magnus Bagstedt now, the Swedish rider who suddenly refound his old form. Bagstedt moves up. I think the rider just behind him there too could well be Frankie Hoy. As now they start to go over the line, and it looks to me as though Hasselbacher is second wheel here as Foster leads him out. Now there's a rush on the left of the road as well, as Magnus Bagstedt has gone for the line here now. Now Big Maggie could do this. If he opens this will go down as a big surprise, but there's a late run coming at him, and he's not going to get it on the line now. This is going to be a very, very fast and final finish. Tom Boonen makes it. He gets the victory right on the line. It was a decisive win as well. Well, he deserves that, absolutely. Congratulations at the back of the race for a job well done there by the boys from Davitamon. That was a superb victory by Tom Boonen, and Magnus Bagstedt may have held on there to get second place. But Tom Boonen, 2 flat tyres at crucial moments. His team made sure they were on hand to give him a wheel, put him back in the race. He got back to the front, and and thank you very much, Johan Museo, because he was the one that went back and said to Boonen, just calm down, take it easy. Now surveys Canavan, the former winner of Paris-Roubaix and the former champion of Holland as well, also offering his congratulations. This team totally united today to give Tom Boonen his biggest victory of his career. He was the only man to get 5 stars in the local newspaper this morning, and he's won the day for Belgium. The first Belgian winner since Geert van Bont back in the year 2000. Here's how he did it. Bagstead just went a fraction too early and faded off to the right. There was no stopping Tom this year. Third last year, finishing on his backside in amongst the cameramen.
One quick question. It's an awful big risk for a team to completely count on just one man, especially when there are riders in the group like Jan Kursepu.
Yeah, that's right, but we did it today. We tried it, and I think Tom, he won some sprints this year, so I think it was worth trying it. And yeah, you see, he win the race, so then everything is perfect.
It's a lot of pressure to put on the young shoulders of a rider who's just 23 years of age, but he seems to have the maturity of a much older professional.
Yeah, I'm sure about that. He's 23, but in his head he's, I think, maybe 28 or maybe 30. So he's a lot of confidence in the team, and yeah, I think he needed it, and he starts winning this year, and now he's one of the best now.
When you get the win with a team like that, you're able to put the wind and the rain and the cold a long way behind you.
Yeah, it's better not to think about it. We started this morning, and after 1 kilometer it starts raining, and yeah, then it's a long way to go, but at the end it's nothing.
And this man at 23.5 years of age can already write down on his honours list victory in the Ghent Wevelgem. Look at the lead out again now. Kursepu was well placed there as he tried to follow Tom Bonen. He just didn't have the speed of Bonen, as Bonen shot ahead of the field there. And I think it's Magnus Bagstead. Is he hanging on there for second? It's an awful big gap for the sprint win. He gets it on the line. Then Maggie will get second and Jan Kursepu in third.
Pretty ropey sprint there down towards the end.
Yeah, it was a good sprint for me actually. I like these long straight sprints, and I just said to myself, just stay in the neighbourhood of Bonen, and I had to move around with about 700 to go, and came around, and the whole field just stopped, and I thought, hang on, there's only 300 to go. I got to open up here, and open up, and yeah, I just held it on to about 100 metres from the line when Tom came past me. I mean, he came way too quick for me to be able to do anything, but still second place. You know, we're only half a week to go to Roubaix, and it's a bit of a tick on the, the form is there, and hopefully I can do something.
Boonen's a pretty impressive young kid for 23 years of age.
He's a very, very impressive guy. He's an absolute monster on the bike.
Are you surprised that the team took that risk to just leave it all down to the final sprint? Because there were guys like you and Kursepu in there with a chance of winning.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a risk to take, but at the same time, he's been winning big bunch sprints this year, and I mean, he's one of the fastest guys there is at the moment, and yeah, there was probably the best car they had to play, because he wasn't quite hard enough on the way back from Kemmel today. So you couldn't really get away anyway, because it's a slight tailwind and only short sections of crosswind, and they played the cards right, and did an awesome lead out for Tom.
Second place in Ghent Wevelgem. Does that mean Maggie's back?
I hope so. It's definitely a sign on that the form is there, and now I'm just looking forward to Sunday and hoping that we keep on getting lots and lots of rain.
Good luck. Go and get warm.
Thank you.
Well, George Hincapie there, outnumbered in the breakaway, a battling fourth. He's been fourth before, he's had a third, and of course he's won this race. Perhaps if he'd had the jump of the frog behind me, he might have won again today. But George is looking to Sunday now and Paris-Roubaix, and that's an event he really does want to win. Stay tuned, and we'll bring you right up to date with that in a few days' time. For Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying, until then, goodbye.